Well, folks, how you all doing today? Now it's been a rough day. We've had about five missed starts on this. We're gonna get this one. We're gonna get it. Well, as we can say, we see we've been away for a while, and again, those of you who wish us well, or, worried about us, whatever. Thank you. As you can see, we're dandy, fine. We're as Wolverine friendly as we ever were. Absolutely like a bear kicked awake in the middle of winter. This is normal. No, as we say, we're in a decent mood. Our mind is not, we're not very focused today. It's all, It's because there's just so much to go through. We have 180 pages of this, and I didn't really do an extensive, back search on anything. I just kind of understand that most of you get where we're at now, and I'm going to start with the COVID. I'm going to slide in on some various things. There'll be a bit about Donald Trump, but not Donald Trump as such, more Donald Trump as a symbol for you and I and the average common Western white man across the entire fucking Western world, really. It is, though. I mean, America has troops in its fucking capital, occupying its capital, with calls for a green zone to be put in place, and all of this to be kept in place by a movement system that's remarkably similar to Hunger Games. Meanwhile, I was going to lead with a bit about the Trump, what to do about the Trumpites next door from a crazy lady that went fucking insane over snowplow. But then, there's always more floating in and down here, They all float down here. CDC exposed. Get this now. This, my sons, is where we're gonna slide on into the news today. CDC exposed inflated COVID deaths by 1,600% throughout the election, violated multiple federal laws, peer-reviewed study finds, state local governments must act. This is by Patty McMurray, and this was published on February 9th at 7:47 p.m., so just not very long ago. Throughout the election, Donald Trump was battered by CCP virus statistics, that's the China Wuhan coup flu, statistics in order to hurt the American economy and his political campaign, as well as to demoralize the American people and to justify the mail-in voting and the suppression of certain voting blocks, particularly rural Republicans and rural conservatives. Now, anyhow, we know that it was shamelessly wielded as a political weapon to prevent President Trump and his supporters from rallying as Antifa and Black Lives Matter burned progressive, poor, and minority neighborhoods to the ground throughout the entire year. Now, this characterization of them burning progressive neighborhoods to the ground, that's not quite right, man. Basically, they went to the neighborhood, but then moved up to the business district and did the burning, the looting. Now, don't just say there weren't houses burnt. There was. I'm the first person to tell you this. I've been saying this for weeks, but it's been on the average, on the whole, right? I'm not saying the occasional place wasn't burnt that wasn't a home, yes, but generally you have businesses torched. So what you're really seeing is Antifa and Black Lives Matter burning the competition of the block stores that are supporting them economically now, in my view, at any rate. Now, but that's a small quibble, if you. Now that Biden has been installed into the office of president, notice installed, he's fortified in there now, He promises to increase COVID lockdown measures and extend them further into your ability to travel and to force unscientific mask wearing for at least 100 days. Yeah, we need 2 layers of masks now because it will totally protect me from a virus. Any of you that drink, please take a shot for me. I haven't drank in 20 years, my friends. But a new peer-reviewed study has been released that finds the CDC numbers to be so wildly unsupported as to be pure propaganda. Now, do y'all remember when just about this time last year, sometime right around March, I was saying that all of this was a Blue Beam mindfuck? In fact, I actually used Project Blue Beam as part of the title of one of the videos. Been talked about it several times for several weeks after that, because I hate to be repetitive, but once I get an idea, right? And well, it looks like we've come full circle back to that, Now, propaganda, again, that is based on wholly unscientific practices that were needlessly created on the spot. I'll say it even more directly, that were purposely created on the spot so as to create unscientific results that could be used as propaganda. The only failure is in assuming that there was any scientific intent. No, but a new peer-reviewed study has been released that finds the CDC numbers to be so wildly unsupported, again, their propaganda. And, I want to keep this in perspective. While we're learning about all of this, the Senate is voting to impeach a private citizen in a trial that effectively is a bill of attainder. It means a bill directed at a specific citizen that punishes them for a crime that they haven't been found guilty of in a court of law, a proper court of law, and sets his guilt in the law that creates his guilt, assumes his guilt, which assumes his guilt in court, which creates the law, which you understand now why a bill of attainder isn't good? Okay, good. They're not allowed at all under the Constitution, by the way. So these 6 Republicans, they're saying that this propaganda that was used to suppress the election is totally cool, and that the Constitution doesn't matter. So, you see, we're going to be believing in and out of this, a lot of stuff about COVID, lockdowns, extremism, domestic terrorism, drone strikes. Oh, Jesus. Okay, guys. But anyhow, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention stands accused of violating federal laws by inflating the Wu flu fatality numbers, according to a stunning information obtained by National File. CDC illegally inflated the COVID fatality numbers by at least 1,600% as the 2020 presidential election played out, according to a study published by the Public Health Initiative for the Institute of Pure and Applied Knowledge. The study, COVID-19 Data Collection, Comorbidity and Federal Law, a historical retrospective, was authored by Henry E. Lee, Michael McEvoy, Daniel Chong, John Nowicki, Monica Sava, Sandeep Gupta, David White, James Jordan, Daniel Simone, and Paul Anderson. The study is 25 pages long with over 100 citations. However, the main points can be summarized. A major point is that testing inaccuracies and unreliability combined with scientific procedures and methods resulted in demonstrably massive false positive spikes. The CDC is now illegally, and this is all quote, is now legally requiring red-blooded Americans to wear face masks on all public transportation as globalists try to push the concept of double masking on the populace. Since the election, the World Health Organization admits that the PCR tests are not totally reliable on the first try, and a second test might be needed. That'll be another $250, sir. This corresponds with the CDC's quiet admission that it blended viral and antibody test results for its case numbers. Remember when I was saying they were testing for antibodies for coronaviruses and not viral load? The CDC quiet admission that it blended viral and antibody results for its case numbers, and that people can test positive on an antibody test if they have antibodies from a family of viruses. Remember when I was saying that too? And I was being called a nutbag. It looks like those hours of those virology lessons and lectures and such from these world experts who disagree with the CDC's point of view paid off, eh? Now, look at this shit now. And that people can, family virus that caused the common cold. Same exact as exactly what I've been saying for months now, my friends. And, it's not just myself. I'm not some prophet, Virologists, good ones, and epidemiologists knew this all the way through, man. There was tons of them. I swear I read at least one of these antibody type things, at least in summary to y'all. At least one. And I know I did on the hydroxychloroquine, what's that one? That's not the ivermectin, it's the other one that was produced at the Holocaust. It only got you a couple days shaved off and so forth. Fauci's people were involved with it. I just can't remember the name of the drug right off, But the point is this is ridiculous. When a 47-year-old convict can figure out months ago the CDC's numbers were based on blending viral load, that is actual sickness, with antibody, which is your body's overcoming former sicknesses, as some kind of condition of ill health. It was all bukum. It's hokum. It's nonsense. Hospitals in Florida had so many accuracy complications that Orlando Health had to admit that its 9.4% positivity rate got recorded at 98%. So they took 98% recorded rate and just turned it into 9.4% just randomly. What? And it seems that Gates and Fauci and the National Institute for Health own a stake in the vaccines. And yes, and I might note those stakes were ultimately bought with your money through grant money that was given to the Gates Foundation and that Gates reinvested into business, on that Fauci routed back through government sort of funding consortiums that went back into the pharmaceutical companies who lobbied the government, who brought more of your money. Does this make sense? Okay, good, yeah. Quote, the groundbreaking peer-reviewed research asserts that the CDC willfully violated federal laws, including the Information Quality Act, Paperwork Reduction Act, and Administrative Procedures Act at a minimum. Well, you know, it's funny. They always want to slap you for these minor violations of law. Most notably, the CDC illegally enacted new rules for data collection and reporting exclusively for COVID-19 that resulted in a 1,600% inflation of current COVID-19 fatality totals, the watchdog group All Concerned Citizens declared in a statement provided to National FAL, referring to the Institute for Pure and Applied Knowledge Study. The research demonstrates that the CDC failed to apply for mandatory federal oversight and failed to open a mandatory period for public scientific comment in both instances, as is required by federal law, before enacting new rules for data collection and reporting. The CDC is required to be in full compliance with all federal laws, even during emergency situations. The research asserts that CDC willfully compromised the accuracy and integrity of all COVID-19 cases and fatality data from the onset of the crisis in order to fraudulently inflate case and fatality data. They did this in order to fraudulently inflate the data. But that's not all. Other major COVID collection and reporting standards created on March 24th of 2020 that inexplicably and intentionally changed decades-old practices in order to hide comorbidities and pre-existing health conditions on death reports. Remember back that far when I was saying that a lot of these deaths were being, I'm sorry, I hate to keep this, These underlying health conditions may likely have been the actual or most important cause of death. On March 24th, the CDC published the NVSS COVID-19 Alert Number 2 document, instructing medical examiners, coroners, and physicians to de-emphasize underlying causes of death, also referred to as pre-existing conditions or comorbidities, by recording them in a Part 2 rather than Part 1 of the death certificate as the underlying cause of death are expected to result in COVID-19 being the underlying cause of death more often than not. This was a major rule change for death certificates reporting from the CDC's 2000 Coroner's Handbook on Death Registration and Fetal Death Reporting and Physician's Handbook on Medical Certification of Death, which have instructed death reporting professionals nationwide to report underlying conditions in Part 1 for the previous 17 years. Well, that's coincidence. That's nice, isn't it? This single change resulted in a significant inflation of COVID-19 fatalities by instructing that COVID-19 be listed in Part 1 of death certificates as a definitive cause of death, regardless of confirmatory evidence, rather than listed in Part 2 as a contributor to death in the presence of pre-existing conditions, as would have been done using the 2003 guidelines. The research shows attention to this key distinction as it has led to a significant inflation in COVID fatality totals. By the researchers' estimates, you get 1,600% above what it would have been if you had used the numbers used in 2003. And still, there is more. Last spring, the CDC created COVID-19 exclusive rules that violated federal law by outsourcing data collection rule development and wrote new rules to count probable cases without any definite proof of infection. In other words, they have no actual evidence anyone is sick when they're saying you're a case, just like I've said for months. The new rules are also allow tracers to practice medicine without a license while disallowing any measures to be put in place to prevent a patient from being counted multiple times. Quote, then on April 14th, the CDC adopted additional rules exclusive for COVID-19 in violation of federal law by outsourcing data collection rule development to the Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists, that's CSTE, a nonprofit entity, again without applying for oversight and opening opportunity for public scientific review. On April 5th, the CSTE published a position paper standardizing surveillance case definition and national notification for 2019 novel coronavirus disease, listing 5 CDC employees as subject matter experts. This key document created new rules for counting probable cases as actual cases without definitive proof of infection. New rules for contact tracing, allowing contact tracers to practice medicine without a license, and yet refused to define new rules for ensuring that the same person could not be counted multiple times as a new case. End quote. Why would those in power wish to do such inhumane things to the entire population of America? The national file concludes, by enacting these new rules exclusively for COVID-19 in violation of federal law, the research alleges that the CDC significantly inflated data that has been used by election officials and public health officials in conjunction with unproven projection models from the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation to justify extended closures for schools, places of worship, entertainment, and small businesses, leading to unprecedented emotional and economic hardships nationwide. A formal petition has been sent to the Department of Justice as well as to all U.S. attorneys seeking an immediate grand jury investigation into these allegations. There is much more to report, and we suggest that you read the report. You can get it. I'll get you the link if you want it. Now, all data since last year suggested that COVID-19 hysteria is part of an orchestrated coup against Western values, nations, and law. Let's just be honest, right? I mean, all right. At what point will the evidence and data be enough to break the spell cast on millions of Americans by the COVID death mask cult? Hard to say. I really don't know. Please bring this report to your local officials and insist that they read it and reverse the policies being implemented and ramped up across the country, or America is surely a dead letter. And unfortunately, conservatives, Americans, white Americans will endure, but America, as you know, it's gone, man. It's been ransacked. I don't know what to say. Minas Tirith has fallen, bro. Now, that being said, we're going to go to the next article. In an era of liberal groupthink, everyone has a patriotic duty to support the ability of people to the right of them and to dissent. What I'm saying to you is, you have no obligation to support BLM or Antifa, but you cucktard faggots, you have every obligation to support the rest of us to the right, you fucker. You understand? The reason that we're all in this boat together, you shit-tard, shitbird, pussy fucking boomers, is because you faggots have sold out to the Democrats and the Communists since 1965. You fucking Buckley-eyed pussies. Now what? Just that simple, too. Now, in an age when establishment politicians and mainstream media outlets peddle a steady stream of disinformation and outright lies, it is more important than ever that the voices of the right be heard. That's right, that's correct. People in position of power as lying through their teeth is nothing new. You don't say. What is relatively novel, however, is the complete and utter abandonment of objectivity. Any and all semblance of journalistic integrity has been replaced with gaslighting on a grand scale. Aided and abetted by big tech bullies, all too willing to put their thumbs on the scale of public discourse. Consider the ridiculous post-presidency impeachment of Donald Trump, which is really just part of a larger effort to silence half the country. The left spent months encouraging violence and destruction last summer and fall as Antifa BLM riots swept through cities all over the country. And yet big tech and the mainstream media never batted an eyelid. Now, however, everybody who dares to question the integrity of an election marred by irregularities and illegalities on a massive scale is being aggressively silenced on social media and vilified by supposedly objective journalists. KGB journalism, man. An objective observer might be tempted to look at the left's concerted, weeks-long campaign of violence and destruction carried out in cities across the country by well-funded and organized quasi-paramilitaries, and decide it poses a greater threat to the peace and stability of the republic than the media's mystical far-right boogeyman. Yeah. An objective observer would, of course, never be able to get a job at CNN and might find himself booted off his local social media platforms or even fired from his job for voicing his opinions. The shameful reality is that big tech and big business are all too willing to tilt all media manufactured windmills. In the process, the rights and voices of everyday men and women are trampled, silenced, and suppressed. This is why it's absolutely crucial that these voices are protected and given a platform wherever and wherever possible. Thankfully, media networks like Real America's Voice and social media platforms like, you all know the only one that I think is really worth a shit. There's only a couple. But, the Democrat media complex, basically Gab and BitChute are the ones that are really worth the shit as far as I'm concerned. The Democrat media complex must know they cannot simply dismiss 74 million patriotic Americans as neo-Nazis and think the debate has been settled. The debate is just getting started. What's there to debate? They're rabid animals. Kick them in the fucking mouth and knock their teeth out. That's how you deal with a wild beast. You kick it in the face. Now, Americans who truly cherish free speech and free debate must remind big tech that its role is to enable the people to communicate with one another. Well, no, its role is to make money because it's a for-profit business. Under American law, it has only that obligation. Now, and slavery is more profitable than your freedom. So, now, not to decide what they may communicate to one another. Well, you've allowed this through agreeing to their terms of service and becoming dependent upon them. Americans who truly value objective journalism must remind the mainstream media that their job is to speak truth to power, not to spread lies. They don't have a job, quote unquote. The free press is any fucking citizen that wishes to express their opinions to the other citizens. End of story, that's it. Without restriction. Yeah, there's no misinformation about it. There's only, do people believe what Bob has to say? Or do people think Bob is a little soft in the head? Now, the fact is that the media has an unchallenged media feedback loop, and yeah, it can be challenged, but why? Rabid leftists are not going to concede defeat based on some clever fucking argument. That shit's nonsense. Gentlemen parlor games. Why you're dealing with goddamn malice communists. Goddamn delusional. Now, and do you want me to tell you how these malice... You ready? Call them. What can you do about the Trumpites next door? Now, this is from Virginia Heffernan. Heffernan, huh? I wonder where Virginia was born. I wonder if her people come from Poland. No, this is from Mammoth Lakes, California. Now, listen. Eric Harriman of Newport Beach shovels the walkway as workers shovel giant snowdrifts off the roofs of St. Anton condos in Mammoth Lakes after a blizzard dropped as much as 10 feet of snow in the biggest storm system so far this season, Wednesday, February 6th. Now listen to this. Mammoth Mountain was closed Tuesday because of the blizzard, but reopened Wednesday. Now listen to this. Your neighbor legitimately deserves your thanks for helping on snow duty, but how much thanks? Oh, heck no. The Trumpites next door, now listen to this fucking insanity. Next door to our pandemic getaway, who seem as devoted to the ex-president as one can get without being Q fans, just plowed our driveway without being asked and did a great job. Well, how fucking dare they? No. Are these people, do they even exist? Are they imaginary or are they real? Because if they're imaginary, this is crazy. I mean, and if they're real, imagine someone does a nice to you and you say, look at this. How am I going to resist demands for unity in the face of this act of aggressive niceness? How am I going to resist demands for unity in the face of this act of aggressive niceness? So being nice is an aggressive act to this bitch. Do you understand the kind of wild dog fucking stray cat cunt you're dealing with here already? I'm going to say Virginia's a shrew. Okay? Of course, on some level, I realize I owe them thanks. And man, it really looks like the guy back-dragged the driveway like a pro. But how much thanks? I imagine you could just go over, say thank you, hand them a cup of coffee or some cocoa. Maybe even give them like some graham crackers and cookies with milk. And they might be fucking utterly thrilled with that. Could you try that, bitch? Now, remember... Because you see, these neighbors are staunch partisans of blue lies. They believe in police and law and order, and that people should go to jail when they break the law. And there aren't a lot of anything other than white lives in the neighborhood. You see, they're too fucking white out there, so they're racist, you know. So you don't really owe racist if racists do nice things to you, because aggressive niceness is a racist thing. Oh no, watch, it gets better. This is also kind of weird. Back in the city, people don't sweep other people's sidewalks for nothing. You're trying to say that Jews are parasite fucking merchants who won't do anything out of kindness? Isn't that sort of like a caricature that somebody named, his initials were A.H. What was his name again? Anyway, he had a lot to say about that at some point. Anyhow, it gets better. But it's like what Eddie Murphy discovered in that old Saturday Night Live sketch, White Like Me. He goes undercover in white makeup and finds that when white people are among their own, they pop free champagne and live the high life. As Eddie Murphy puts it, slowly I begin to realize that when white people are alone, they give things to each other for free and shit. What? You mean they're kind to their neighbors? Well, fucking them evil racists. Hezbollah. And look, I didn't edit this. Hezbollah, the Shiite extremist political party in Lebanon, also gives things away for free. Oh, you don't say, huh, Jew? The favors Hezbollah does for people in the cities tear inside on probably don't involve snowplows, but like other mafias, implying these white people next to her are a mafia now. Hezbollah tends to its own. The Shiite sick, elderly, and hungry. Can you imagine Shiite people? They tend to the sick, elderly, and hungry. Oh, that's terrible for these Shiites to take care of the sick, elderly, and hungry. Horrible fucking people, right? They offer protection and hospitality and win loyalty that way. They offer protection and hospitality and win loyalty that way. Well, that's a fucking... How can they do that? You can't have hospitality, man. You understand how crazy this bitch is? And they also demand devotion to their brutal us versus them anti-Sunni cause. So, that's... it's kind of amazing that this lady can't understand that to be part of the reward system of a group, you have to be in line with the values of the group. Like a fucking parasite. She just thinks she should get shit without any respect or sense of gratitude to the people she gets it from. And it's like the Jew snivels as you plow their driveway. The Jew calls you an anti-Semite as you plow her driveway. She's a Jew, and that's what she's doing now. Now get this note. Some of us are the family, the favors say, the rest are infidels. Wow. So treating your family like they matter more than people outside of your family, that's a big no-no that only Shiites, white people, and wait, Louis Farrakhan and the Nazis do. I guarantee the Nazis are coming, guys. I haven't even read this far into it. I was going to kind of experience this with you. The same is true with Louis Farrakhan, who currently helms the Nation of Islam. While the Southern Poverty Law Center, that queer fucker and his fat fuck assistant Heidi, classifies him as a dangerous anti-Semite. Why is believing something bad about Jews dangerous to anybody but the interest of grubby parasite merchant people who act like caricatures from 1932? Much of his flock says he's just a little screwy and unfailingly magnanimous to them. Well, yeah, I guess she can't quite grasp the idea. So she does. I guarantee when it's time to be nice to the other Jews, it's anti-Semitic to notice that she's good to them. And it's anti-Semitic for white people to be good to each other. And it's anti-Semitic for white people to notice Jews are good to each other. What do you want to be like? No. When someone helps you when you're down or snowed in, it's almost impossible to regard them as a blight on the world. God damn it, don't you hate it when people that you're supposed to ideologically hate don't act that way? I mean, are you insane? In fact, you're almost more likely to be overwhelmed with gratitude and convinced of the person's inherent goodness. Now listen. Almost likely to be overwhelmed with thinking they have some inherent goodness. But we all know they are corrupt to the bone. You might end up like the upper middle class family I stayed with in France as a teenager. This is pure smoke here, bro. They did not attend a citywide celebration for the 100th birthday of Charles de Gaulle. Fuck de Gaulle. The war hero who orchestrated the liberation of his country from Nazi Germany in 1944. The war hero who liberated his country was raped and pillaged by the American army. They did have several portraits of Philip Pétain on their wall. When I screwed up the courage to ask how it was for them during the occupation, the lady of the house replied, "We were happy because the Nazis were very polis." I didn't know the word, so I excused myself to consult a French-English dictionary. I was in tears when I found the entry, polite. The Jew cries as they strike out fucking an ideological vengeance. So when I accept generosity from my pandemic neighbors, her neighbors are an infection, you see. Acknowledging the legitimate kindness of a wave or a plate of cookies, am I also sealing us in as fellow travelers who are very polis to each other, but not so much to them? You mean like the Palestinians? Let's talk about your relationship to the Palestinians, baby. Got any settler kin? Anybody in the West Bank related to you, baby? Just wondering. Just gotta know. Now, loving your neighbor is evidently much easier when your neighborhood is full of people just like you. Yeah, that's absolutely fucking correct. This Jew seems to actually understand. Loving your neighbor is much easier when your neighborhood is full of people just like you. Exactly like the Jews in Hebron. Exactly like them. Whoops. So what do we do about the Trumpites around us? This is notice. Now, after all this, she wants to know what to do about you. Like Representative Occasional Cortex, who spoke paranoid and disjointedly this week about her delusional fantasies during the citizens' demonstration and protest at the Capitol on January 6th. Americans are expected to forgive and forget before we've even stitched up our wounds. What wounds? It was a lady on the side of us right-wing Nazi cookie plate givers who got shot through the neck. Kike bitch. I mean, see, notice they cry out in agony as they shoot you in the neck. Or gotten our vaccines against the pandemic that former President Trump utterly failed to mitigate. Remember what I said about the pandemic above. When you hear this, notice why I started out with the CDC foo. Everything, all of this press has sort of that as an underlie, mostly. My neighbor supported a man who showed near murderous contempt for the majority of Americans. You mean who didn't think that that they have a 99.97% survival rate according to the CDC, was a significant fucking sickness in any way? Right. Okay, lady. Just understand that this is how insane this bitch is. So, this is a woman responding to snow plowing. Let's keep that in check, because she goes, but the plowing. On January 6th, after the insurrection, Senator Ben Sasse issued a aw shucks plea for all Americans to love their neighbors. The United States, he said, isn't Hatfields and McCoys. This blood feud forever. You can't hate someone who shovels your driveway. What? At that time, I see the Capitol Hill had just been desecrated. Desecrated? You mean regular citizens were in the citizens' house, in the people's house. People were in the people's house, and you desecrated it. Because when regular, normal Americans show up at the Capitol, you're not good enough to be in there, Junior. You might put your fingers on the wall and touch the stuff. Shh. Mom's fine China's too good for you. Okay? Now, let's see. But maybe my neighbor heard Sasse and was determined to make a bid for reconciliation. Or maybe they're normal rural white people and just didn't give a fuck and wanted to help you out because there was a fucking blizzard and figured if you couldn't get out of your home, you'd starve to death. And they didn't want that other in their conscience because unlike you, they're not utter scumbags, bitch. Just gonna lay that out there like that, you know. Now, so here's my response to my plowed driveway for now. Politely, but not profusely, I'll acknowledge this Sassian move. With a wave and a thanks, a minimal sort of building back trust. I'm not ready to knock on the door with a covered dish yet. So she's not willing yet to force you to eat any nasty Jewish food. That's probably a good thing, I think, yeah. I also can't give my neighbors absolution. It's not mine to give. how does a Jew give a bunch of Christian white people absolution at any rate? You can't. Why? Because you're condemned before God. That's why. Perfidious people. Free driveway work, as nice as it is not the same currency as justice and truth. The truth is, bitch, is that you're an unjust fucking sideways whore. Now, to pretend would be to lie, and they probably aren't looking for absolution anyway. Meaning, she can't quite understand these people just did this to do this, and they're not looking for anything from her. Do you notice this? But I can offer a standing invitation to make amends. Not with the snowplow, but by recognizing the truth about the Trump administration. And more important, by working for justice for all those whom the administration harmed. Oh, the Great Spirit, oh. Only when we work shoulder to shoulder to repair the damage of the last 4 years will we even begin to dig out of this storm. You know, guys, if I lived up here, I would outright just go right up to where she lived and plow the snow right back up into her fucking driveway. I would, too. Be like, well, bitch, stay stuck. Now, this is what can you do about the Trumpites next door. That's from Yahoo News is where I got that, yeah. Meanwhile, remember how the COVID popped in there as a reason for why you got to be, all scared and stupid for the rest of your life? Fauci, masks can come off when virus is not a threat at all. Yeah. When no one is in danger of becoming infected or having an antibody from a common cold virus in their system ever again, according to a faulty PCR test that even Fauci admits is fucked up, then you can take that face diaper off your face. In other words, you're going to be wearing that forever, Muhammad. That's what you are, Fatima. You're basically a fucking a Sunna housewife. What do you think about that, huh? Better get your burqa on. Is there going to be a time when we are going to be no masks? Anchor Brett Baer said during an interview. When is that time? If you had to guess, going to a sports game, going to a theater, going to a concert without a mask. Well, that will really be dependent on how much we get the level of the virus in the community down. If we can get, and I've used this as an estimate, it's not definitive. It never is definitive, you notice. It's always jump on 1 foot numbers with falsy Fauci. But if we can get 70 to 85% of the population vaccinated with this completely untested concoction of fucking shit that will most likely poison you, then yeah, and get to what we would hope would be to a degree of herd immunity, which is really an umbrella or a veil of protection against the community. So the community is a veil of protection against the community? What the fuck kind of double talk is this? Where the level of virus is so low, it's not a threat at all. No threat at all. So there'll be no more death and no tears in New Jerusalem, according to Fauci. He's going to bring you to the New Jerusalem, this false prophet is. Then at that point, we can start thinking in terms of not having to uniformly wearing of masks. Uniform wearing of masks. So you must wear a mask now because we're all part of an army that must wear a uniform? Are we inmates issued a prison uniform? Or soldiers with a uniform? Or some kind of crazy communist workers with a Chinese labor work uniform? Anyone? Anybody? Fauci, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease Director, said that the U.S. is not near a time when America can go NAS-free. You're just not near it. You can't do it because Fauci says. If everything falls into the right place and we get this under control, it is conceivable you might be able to pull back a bit on some of the public health measures as we get into late fall this year. You mean like you said of fucking summer and fall of last year, you lying motherfucking piece of shit? We played that game last year, you fucker. No, but there's no guarantee that because if we don't get the overwhelming majority of the population vaccinated, there's still going to be a considerable amount of virus in the community. And as long as that's the case, people are going to have to wear masks. Meaning, unless you people take our fucking experimental concoction that we've given ourselves absolute immunity from any side effects you may have, none of you can go free again. Isn't that coercion? Now, wouldn't that be illegal underneath their own Nuremberg Code that they cooked up at the end of World War II to hang some Germans? But what do I know, At any rate, in mid-December, Fauci estimated that as long as compliance is good and people step up to the plate, a significant percentage of the population will have vaccine-induced herd immunity that could allow the removal of masks by the end of June. notice, just 3 months ago, he'd said June. Now it's fall. And then it'll be winter next again. But, winters are bad because when people get sick in winter, so it'll have to be next spring. But then when it won't be next spring, it'll be next summer. Well, then it won't be next summer, it'll be next fall. But then it can't be winter, so it'll have to be the spring, you see. Now you're at 2020 fucking 3. How many years are you going to give up to this asshat little fucking lying two-faced clown? Seriously, though. However, according to the Daily Caller, the vaccine rollouts have been slower than initial predictions. Just over 32 million people have received their first dose from Pfizer or Moderna, but less than 10 million have received the necessary second dose. Well, now, you say, but man, at least, while we're locked up in our homes, we can spend money and be free economically and all that, and, Yeah, Bank of America handed over customer data to the feds following the Capitol incident. At least one person was investigated by agents based on info from America's second largest bank. No, Bank of America secretly turned over customer data to the FBI. Tucker Carlson tonight, host, warns anyone can be considered a domestic extremist. He's right. There has been an enormous amount of talk, not just this week, but over the last month, about violent extremism and the people who embrace it. Those people, we're told, are domestic terrorists who must be put down by force. The war on terror has moved stateside. Extremists are inside our country, and we must hunt them down. We're hearing those words nonstop, not just on cable news, but from elected officials, including some Republicans. We're hearing it from the leaders of federal law enforcement agencies and the intelligence agencies. We're hearing it from the Pentagon. Just this week, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin ordered the entire U.S. military to stand down while investigators cleanse the ranks of political extremists. Political purges in the American military. Political purges in the American military. You understand? This is the Soviet purging of the officers, for fuck's sakes. And of course, we're hearing it from the business establishment, from Wall Street and tech monopolies, from the massive multinational corporations that increasingly control the contours of American life. All of them are now on the hunt for political extremists. At one level, that does not sound bad. No sane person is for political extremism, especially violent extremism. We're for moderation, for incremental change, and the consent of the governed. We've said that every day for 4 years, and we mean it. And I respect Carlson for his views. I may not agree with him all the time, but I can respect that he's pretty steadfast in what he believes, Okay. But it's not enough to be against something. We have to be more precise than that. In order to root out a problem, you have to know what that problem is. You need a sense of what you're looking for, a clear picture. You have to define the terms. The remarkable thing about this public conversation we're having is that no one is defining the terms. Have you noticed that none of these newly energized and highly empowered extremist hunters have told us exactly what an extremist is? We're left to guess, to look around nervously to see if we can spot one. They're not talking about us, are they? And if they are, what exactly are they doing? How are they hunting these extremists they keep telling us about, but will not describe? How? We now know part of the answer to that question. Tucker Carlson tonight has exclusively obtained evidence that Bank of America, the second largest bank in the country with more than 60 million customers, is actively but secretly engaging in the hunt for extremists in cooperation with the government. They're snitching you out. Bank of America is, without the knowledge or the consent of their customers, sharing private information with federal law enforcement agencies. Bank of America effectively is acting as an intelligence agency, but they're not telling you about it. Yeah. Starting your own credit union isn't such a crazy idea anymore, huh, fuckers? In the day after the June 6th riots, the June 6th tumults at the Capitol, Bank of America went through its own customers' financial and transactional records. Now listen to this. These were the private records of Americans who had committed no crime. People who, as far as we know, had absolutely nothing to do with anything that happened at the Capitol. But at the request of federal investigators, Bank of America searched its databases looking for people who fit a specific profile. Here's what the profile was. 1. Customers confirmed as transacting either through bank account, debit card, or credit card purchases in Washington, D.C. between the 5th of January and the 6th of January. Purchases made for hotel, air, bed, and breakfast, RSVPs in D.C., Virginia, and Maryland after the 6th. Any purchase of weapons or at a weapons-related merchant between the 7th of January and their upcoming suspected stay in D.C. area around Inauguration Day. 4 airline-related purchases since the 1st of January. No, 6th of January, excuse me. The first thing you should notice about that profile is that it's remarkably broad. Any purchases of anything in Washington, D.C., any overnight stay anywhere in the area spanning 3 jurisdictions and thousands of miles, any purchase not just of legal firearms, but of anything bought from a weapons-related merchant, t-shirts included, and any airline-related purchases, not just flights to Washington, but flights to anywhere, from Omaha to Thailand. This is an absurdly wide net. Bank of America identified a total of 211 customers who met these thresholds of interest. At that point, Tucker Carlson Knight has learned Bank of America turned over the results of its internal scan to federal authorities, apparently without notifying the customers who were being spied upon. Federal investigators then interviewed at least one of these unsuspecting people. That person, we've learned, hadn't done anything wrong and was cleared. Imagine if you were that person. The FBI hauls you in for questioning in a terror investigation, not because you've done anything suspicious, but because you bought plane tickets and visited your country's capital. Now they're sweating you because your bank, which you trust with your most private information, has ratted you out without your knowledge. Because Bank of America did that, you're being treated like a member of Al-Qaeda. No, it doesn't matter how much you despise Donald Trump or how much you believe that hatred of Trump justifies suspending this country's ancient civil liberties. Going through that experience would scare the hell out of you. Does anyone else know about this? Is there a record of this interview? Will I lose my job because of it? That actually happened to someone. Tucker Carlson tonight asked Bank of America about this. They confirmed it as it actually happened by not denying it. Here's their statement in full, which somehow manages to make the whole thing even creepier. We don't comment on our communications with law enforcement. All banks have responsibilities under federal law to cooperate with law enforcement in inquiries in full compliance with the law. The phrase "in full compliance with the law" implies that Bank of America had no choice, but that's not true. Bank of America did have a choice. It could have resisted turning over information on its innocent customers to federal investigators, but it did not. It's not even clear that what Bank of America did is even legal. We spoke to a number of lawyers about this, and some of them told us that what Bank of America did might in fact not be legal and could in fact be challenged in court. One knowledgeable attorney pointed us to 12 U.S.C. 3403. That's a federal law that allows banks to tip off the feds to any information that may be relevant to a possible violation of any statute or regulation. Now, the Justice Department instructs federal agents to remind banks of that law, and of course, they do so with maximum aggression. But the question is, what legally constitutes information that may be relevant to a possible crime? Does buying a muffin in Washington, D.C. on January 5th make you a potential domestic extremist? According to Bank of America, yes, it does. This is a moment when, for the sake of our country and our grandchildren who will live here, we need to pause, breathe deeply, avoid hysteria, and ask, what are the rules? What, for God's sakes, is a political extremist? A lot hangs on that question. But they pointedly won't tell us. At the White House Thursday, for example, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told reporters that domestic violent extremism is the urgent crisis of our time. But Sullivan did not explain what it is. So, Build Back Better is not just about economics. It's about national security as well. Yeah. We're going to have the labor camps, you know what I mean? Hunger Games style, baby. And then it's about the set of issues that working families in this country are facing every day, like having too much time on their hands to think and too much extra wages that they actually have some fat on them. The pandemic, climate change, the threat of domestic violent extremism. That's what it's all about, baby. Those are the threats challenging your life, you know. Climate change. Not your job being taken away, not Antifa burning down your fucking neighborhood, but no. Right-wing people objecting to left-wing people stealing an election is the thing that your whole entire working families are going to die. Yeah, okay. We're starting to believe that they're not defining it for a reason. On Wednesday, a New York Times op-ed asked the question, are private messaging apps the new misinformation hotspot? As the newspaper put it, the shift to private messaging has renewed a debate over whether encryption is a double-edged sword. While the technology prevents people from being spied on, it might also make it easier for criminals and misinformation spreaders to do harm without getting caught. Notice criminals and misinformation spreaders are in the same sentence. They're pretty much the same thing. What's a misinformation spreader? Well, there's some kind of domestic extremist, obviously. Someone who doesn't agree with the New York Times is obviously, and of course, a domestic extremist and dangerous. If you think we're joking, we're not. And no, either are these crazy-ass motherfuckers. They're just not either. I'm going to give you the other side of this little argument. Tucker Carlson defends white supremacists from domestic terrorist label. Carlson, keep in mind you're talking about American citizens. They're talking about you. And yeah, Carlson's right. Tucker Carlson, equity and inclusion means that you will believe what they tell you to believe, period. Or else you're a terrorist, and they can hurt you because we hurt terrorists. Listen to America's new Grand Inquisitor, Adam Schiff of California. Representative Adam Schiff, quote, "We have been urging for some time that the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security raise the priority to domestic terrorism, to white nationalism as it threatens the country, and we're going to continue sounding alarm and make sure that they're devoting the resources, the time, and the attention, just as we did after 9/11, to the threat from international terrorism. We need to give the same priority and urgency to white nationalism as domestic terrorism." Carlson, got that? Vote the wrong way and you're a jihadi. You thought you were an American citizen with rights and just a different view? No, you're a jihadi. And we're going to treat you that way as we treat these radicals after 9/11. We're going to treat you like bin Laden. Get in line, pal. This is a war on terror. Keep in mind as you listen to people like this talk, and Adam Schiff is far from the only one. Keep in mind that they're talking about American citizens. They're talking about you. And the left is angry that Carlson said that. He's protecting white supremacists when he's trying to stop, well, you know. Now, when I come back, I'm going to start off with some other stuff. As you can see, we got a lot to go through. So, now, basically, Laura Ingraham is also a white supremacist. Imagine that. And then we got a little new normal, which is going to discuss the domestic war on terrorism. So, we'll splice it in. We'll get it done sometime in the next, a little while. With that, y'all take care of yourself. Have a nice day. Well, folks, how y'all doing today? Oh, it's another day. We continue to just sit in amazement at the utter decline into insanity. Guys, I forgot my glasses. Just 1 second. You can tell I care about the high-quality, vast production value of these. For people who talk to me about that kind of mercantile shit, let me explain this to you. 0 minus 0 is what? What is 0 plus fucking 0? How about 0 times 0? And since 0 divided by 0 is undefined, we have all the properties of 0 we need to know. Okay, bro. Good. Now, any of you ever actually watch Fox News? I try to watch a few different news sources, to be honest, and I see more than I want to of CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, and all of you who don't watch that shit to filter the enemy's intentions from the ball, like trying to read that crystal thing in Jennifer's tower. You should feel grateful. But basically, I imagine more of you what you would watch is One Nation News Now, maybe Fox News, okay, right? Things of this nature. Perhaps that one guy who does the China news, that's pretty good stuff. And then, the Epoch Times and this sort of things, yes? Okay, fine. And yes, truly, I like reading those myself. I find them really delightful. You know why? I don't have to filter the intention of the enemy. They've already come out with the money shot quotes. You know what I mean? Yeah? Okay, good. Laura Ingraham is now the queen of white nationalism. Now, I'd like to point out that of these people, because now Dobbs is gone. I can't believe that Lou got the hammer, but he went out like a fucking man. Lou went down like a fucking savage, man. I have respect for Lou Dobbs, to be honest. He'd ask real questions and entertained actual assertions on his show that no other news show would even fucking touch because they didn't have the balls to listen to the people, to even question the validity of their statements, much less actually present any facts. You understand? I can admire Dobbs for that. The same reason I admire Hannity with his whole thing with Russiagate and with his tenacity on this deep infestation of corruption within the bureaucratic apparatus in courts and so forth and media and the rest of the United States. I can respect them Irish little bastard for that. I respect Sean for that. I don't agree with them. Either of them. Absolutely. No. You understand? But come on, man. No, now they want to get rid of Ingram and Tucker. Remember, Tucker is he's the prince of the white nationalist hate nativist mob. All hail King Tuck. Friar Tuck shall lead the green men of the woods. Now, Laura will be our Maid Marian. Sorry, guys, I just have to have a little humor at times. Miss Ingram is spreading the white nationalist concept, my friends. Now, listen, that basically, like I said, I've been watching her off and on since the very top of all of this, right after I Can't Breathe overdose, since he wasn't killed, he overdosed. He killed himself. If he would have just told the cops, hey, man, I ate a bunch of fentanyl and cocaine, like a fucking man, kept his goddamn hands on the wheel, or his own self, or even on his own, just like this, and not flailed around like a fucking idiot, they would have just backed up, kept a weapon on him, called for fucking medical car would have came and went, with some Norcon, and dude would have fucking lived. Now, that's the reality. I can't breathe me, bro. Okay? Now, since the very top of that, she's one of the few journalist-type people who I've seen go down into these rubble and ruin and burnt-out fucking chaos zones and say, what do you think about being burnt out? Does this, actually talk to the actual people down there? They're going to suffer. They're going to go without business. They're going to have to go 20 or 30, 40 blocks to get what they need done that they used to go 2 blocks. You understand? So, if that's white nationalist, I'm like, well, okay. Because what I cipher that they're considering white nationalist out of what she's saying is, now listen to this, guys. You may need to take a seat. It's like, I wonder if these guys actually know how to play adult chess. Because what white nationalism is now is, are you ready? Not wanting areas of your city to go up into flames spontaneously because criminals act like savages on the streets and get put down by cops. Wanting your kids to have safe schools. Wanting to have employment that, again, doesn't go up in flames or have people come in randomly and commit violence against you. And being able to live in places where people don't come and randomly toss bricks through your window and shine lasers in your eyes and do you other harm. Fucking, I know, crazy white nationalist concepts, boys. See, this is why I always tell you, just allow these people to be like Gollum on top. They'll topple themselves soon, my man. Do you understand? I mean, they'll topple themselves soon. Do you understand? That's just crazy, man. So, now, it's funny that they're really mad that Ingram pointed out that Hollywood, that actual aliens, illegal aliens amongst maybe even, I don't know how many, do you know how many dead people voted in this election? I don't either. I try to find the number, but it's so varied that I can tell you some ranges of estimates. Can you do better? I don't want to ruin it for you. I actually want you to go look for that yourself, my man. Dig into that a bit, will you, fellas? Because I like to know how many Casper the Friendly Ghosts we have running around, I got to know where the ghosts be, bro. No. And then she points out that Black Lives Matter people rallied black areas and effectively made them vote the same way that third world African dictator paramilitaries do. Or something you'd see in Hugo Chavez and down in the slums where these parties going to mobilize the neighborhood. It's the same words that BLM used. We're going to mobilize the people. We're going to, Black Liberation Movement, BLM. Look it up. Black Liberation Movement. Go look it up. Just don't fight. Just type it in somewhere to search bar, whatever fucking search engine you like, or search spider, or however you like to go, and look for it. Go to the library and look it up. Go find a good library in a major city. Check out the newspapers and look for any incidents that involve them, perhaps. Murders, kidnappings, robberies, terror attacks, arsons. Sound familiar? Anything you know? So that's white nationalism, to know this and point this out. Well, hi, Laura. Welcome to Hades, babe. I guess down here in the green wood of the underworld of the dark world, we got to have somebody to, make the cheering so we can all have muffins. Somebody's got to bake the cookies. Because, I mean, look, basically, if you think about what Laura Ingraham actually is, she's a roughly just a little older than me, middle age, right? Married woman with children, yes, who probably, if she wasn't a news anchor, would be doing some kind of managerial job and come home and bake meatloaf and then put some peas on a plate, and you might even get a little cookie with some milk afterwards. Ooh, this is a real neo-Nazi fucking threat to society here. You understand? You understand just the fucking absurdity of that, my friend? Because if you don't, I can't help you, man. But if you do, oh, I'm here. Well, you see, bro? On the other hand, you have to admire the utter stupidity of our enemies and just forcing huge segments of the Republican base and the rural rednecks who don't give a flying fuck about elections usually at all. Listen, I think their vote was suppressed by the machines personally this time around. But this sort of rhetoric where Laura Ingraham, who is, again, that's just what I said, a skinny mini house mom, soccer mom broad who probably, if she was normal, person who wasn't a known personality, would be the exact chick that you'd be like, hi, Laura, how you doing? She'd be like, oh, tomorrow there's going to be a cookout. Want to come over? Okay, I'll bring some, some noodles. Oh, that'd be great. Okay. See you at 5. You know what I mean? You know the one? Everybody know this person? She just seems like this isn't exactly an act. Now, of course, is she kind of catty in her way? And yeah, but anybody who knew her would just know this is how it kind of is, I mean, you get cross with her and she gets fucking vicious, but overall, even then, have you ever listened to any of her broadcasts? It's amazing the things that she's on about. It's like she wants the freedom to be safe, to do things that don't harm other people. Fucking profound shit there. It sounds like this thing called English liberty. It's insane. I think that I've read somewhere about that. I don't know, I have. Let's not kid yourself. I'm being sideways here right now. But it's absolutely clean. And then Ingram's biggest crime seems to be that saying point blank that Biden is inviting people to overrun our borders. She is. She's like the Emperor Aurelian who invited in the first Germanics, I think he was. It's like, are you kidding me? Yeah. I mean, where do you think those people who assisted the Romans at Shalom came from? To fight the Huns? Great battle that saved the West. It's one of the turning points of Western history. It's right there with Benevidim and, Anyway, it doesn't matter, my friend, These are important things. Anyhow, Tours is another one. But then everyone always forgets the naval battle. I can't remember what that's called. But it's a battle between the Arabs and the Byzantines. And the Byzantines overcame. And because Constantinople held, the great fortress of Christendom, the West fucking held, Islam was pushed back. That's a fuck. So imagine if they had people like Biden being in charge. Because, they're saying that Ingram's wrong when she says that they're inviting people to burst through our borders and exploit our resources and commit crimes. But their very being here and getting the resources through welfare is a goddamn crime. At least on the books. And employing them is a crime. So why are they here at all? And before you start your shit about racism, boy, you go try to be an illegal alien in Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, or El Salvador, you little fucking snivelly twat. Shut your mouth. Go try to be an illegal alien in, say, the Dominican Republic, which is before you even try with the Haiti nonsense. The Dominican Republic is literally as different in resources and richness as the very poorest and the very richest of American states. Think about that. Just put your head around that. You're like, really? Wow. So, Dominican Republic could pay for your ass if they wanted to. They just won't. In fact, almost no other country on the planet Earth will give you anything but the right to work for minimum wage. America. So why is Laura somehow Queen neo-Nazi for pointing this out? Because it's National Socialist and white nationalists, you see, to believe this at all. Well, they're going to get to the Nazi comparison real soon here. You already know what's coming. And then, of course, she's claiming that Black Lives Matter has stormed schools and indoctrinated children. By that, she means Marxist-Leninism, and she's absolutely goddamn 100% spot on fucking correct. What can you do? Good for you, Laura. I'm glad that you can have that perch and say, these are communists. Thanks, babes. I appreciate that. It's great of you, you know? I can't understand why I'm supposed to hate this broad. I get why the leftists in charge that are writing this pape for the Yahoo News of HuffPo's analysis of Yahoo News's analysis of HuffPo's opinion piece, which, you already know that's going to be bitingly objective, right? So we understand. Ingram has a history of spreading white nationalist talking points. Yes. And her biggest problem is she pointed out that Amazon's Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and the other Hollywood peoples pushed Biden and the lie of this whole situation that we're in right now upon us, and they're in a common plot against us. That's what makes her a real neo-Nazi, understanding the nature of the conflict against all of us, which isn't been initiated by us. It's just as Warren Buffett said, the class warfare has been conducted by the elite and the rich against the common people. That's right. I mean, all she wanted was a fair election, and they shot her in the throat, bro. You know? No. At any rate, I guess Laura's like, come out of the woodwork. She's become one of those must be shut down people. You know what I mean? Well, you can't have other points of view if you want to enforce a mythical belief like Marxist-Leninism. I mean, all hail the great leader Biden and shit. Don't worry. Watch this. When Joe, who looks like he's just about ready to fall over dead of just breathing, frankly, the man's not healthy. I'm not going to lie, he's not, though, When he goes to God soon enough, they're going to say that people not liking Joe, people not wearing masks, or whatever other fucking insanity killed Joe. Make Joe into like some kind of god, and then Kamala will be the high priest of his religion, like some weird parody of Dune. What is it, Dune Messiah, Yeah. Do you think that's too much? And I think, bullshit. These people are utterly fucking megalomaniacally insane, brother. You understand? With that, we're going to get to the new normal. The war on domestic terror, my friend. The war on you. Because, as I pointed out the other day, domestic terrorist means, and I'm going to open this up right quick, means war on you, man. You are this. So yeah, if you enjoyed the global war on terror, you're going to love the new war on domestic terror. Well, it's just like the original global war on terror, except this time the terrorists are all called domestic violent extremists, DVE. You're a DVE. Homegrown violent extremist, violent conspiracy theorist extremists, meaning people who believe concepts that are contrary to their beliefs. Because I want you to get this in your head. Before I even read the rest of this anachronism wall here, there's a lot of this. So if you want to write this stuff down, please do, The article's called The, parentheses, New Normal, in parentheses, War on Domestic Terror. Go look that up and you can, you know what I mean. Then you get all. But with communists, if you don't believe what they tell you to believe, you're automatically a violent threat. In fact, in the Soviet Union, they would preemptively medicate you to make you compliant with the beliefs of the party, Winston. So, violent reality denialist extremist. Reality denialists. There are reality denialists. You mean like the reality of the subspecies of humans? The reality that your entire one world unity nonsense is completely a fucking communist Marxist lie? That reality? And conspiracy theory extremists. Meaning people who don't give a fuck about your value system and are willing to say, go step the fuck off my cloud. I like them more already. Let's see. Insurrectionary microaggressionist extremist. What's a microaggressionist? And how do you... Microaggressionist. Listen. There's an insurrectionary microaggressions. Okay, mother. I got it. Okay, bros. This is one of those things I have to look up. I think that was a fucking joke, man. And really, anyone else the Department of Homeland Security wants to label an extremist and slap a ridiculous acronym on. Okay. That last one was a joke. Fine. But that's where we're headed, though. That's the... I almost got took by that, but good. All right. Now, according to the National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin, issued by the DHS on January 27th. These DCEs, IVEs, VCTEs, VDREs, IMAEs, which is an insurrectionary, microaggressionary extremist, and people who fucking make liberals feel uncomfortable, are ideologically motivated violent extremists with objections to the exercise of governmental authority. You mean like Paul Revere and the people at Lexington and Concord, perhaps? George Washington would be one of these ideologically motivated violent extremists with objections to the, and perceived grievances fueled by false narratives. Oh, so anyone with a perceived grievance fueled by a false narrative, Winston, is a domestic extremist. How about that? Why don't we just go with that? They are believed to be motivated by a range of issues, including anger over COVID-19 restrictions. You mean people don't like being locked down and made to be poor on purpose? Fascinating. The 2020 election results? Yeah, most people don't like being cheated. Police use of force? No. People aren't really so much worried about I can't breathe. And other dangerous false narratives. The existence of the, quote, deep state. You mean of the entity that is in our bureaucracy, in our judiciary, in our media, and in our colleges that has been working against the presidency to topple them to create the Biden imperial presidency, which they'll rule from the shadows? You mean those eunuchs, the deep state? Yeah, they're totally non-existent, bro. And then they're trying to... Herd immunity is the existence of a false narrative. Herd immunity is a reality. Every respiratory disease reaches herd immunity eventually. Every single one. All of them. Even flu, generally, the reason it does, you don't have huge pandemics like the Spanish flu over and over and over again, is because largely with novel strains, though there are a few more deaths that year, the general herd immunity from the last strain and several other strains before that you have in your antigen memory, we'll just call it, that's a nice, easy way to think of it, will work to combat against the new novel strain and most likely be successful overall, depending on the individual person's exposures and reactions and so forth. Do you understand? Yes. So for that to be considered false is nonsense. Oh, biological sex is a false narrative. You get it. Biological sex is a false narrative, according to these people. Have you ever bred cattle? Have you one of them ever said, I'm not a cow, I'm a bull? Yeah. No. Inspired by foreign terrorist groups and emboldened by the breach of the U.S. Capitol, this diabolical network of domestic terrorists is plotting attacks against government facilities. You mean, are they talking about Antifa in Portland? Perhaps. Anyone? At any rate, they're threatening violence against critical infrastructure. What? What exactly are they? And what does violence exactly mean here? So, when Antifa burns down, like, for instance, the bus shed and the train terminal in a city and people can't move around easily anymore, is that critical infrastructure? I'm just kind of I want to know the parameters here, bro. Now, and actively citing misinformation and conspiracy theories about COVID-19. So not believing their bullshit about the Coup virus, which is absolutely not lethal, is now exactly the same as being a foreign terrorist jihadi, just like I said months ago, bro. For all we know, they might be huddled in the wolf's lair at Mar-a-Lago right now, plotting a devastating terrorist attack with those weapons of mass destruction we never found in Iraq, or generating population-adjusted death rate charts going back 20 years, or posting pictures of extremist frogs on the internet. Or they may just be speaking like normal people and telling you, and you know what, fellas, I'm going to tell you this because it's just too much to understand at times, man. What you got to do is you got to have fun at times, and mocking these people is my idea of fun. So, yeah, that's about right. They are scared of meme frogs, and they're still hunting for mystical weapons of mass destruction. And yeah, the Department of Homeland Security is concerned. Were they concerned when their own courthouses were being torched by Antifa? I mean, or when actual police buildings were took the fuck over by Antifa and BLM and turned into cinders? Anyone? No? No, okay, yeah, all right. Or as its counterparts throughout the world, global isn't a capitalist empire. Well, I mean, it's kind of like I said before, it's like Stalinism type capitalism or state capitalism. It can be seen as that because you're not allowed to make money anymore, little dude. See GameStop, Silver, and everything else. You know what I mean, bro? You better get back on the plantation, bro. But okay, the world empire. What is it called? The world empire. You know, everyone knows. Those guys that put the ships out to sea that ensure that the Chinese get to sell us the junk so that I guess the Chinese can win the naval war against us. I never quite got the logic of that. But we're not going to talk about that. That's not today. Now, the new war on domestic terrorism isn't just a war on American domestic terror. The domestic terror threat is international. So we're all one big happy plantation now. France just got passed a global security law banning citizens from filming the police beating the living snot out of people, among other anti-terrorist provisions. In Germany, the government is preparing to install an anti-terror moat around the Reichstag. In the Netherlands, the police are cracking down on the VCTs, VTREs, and other angry citizens who hate the system, who have just been protesting over nightly curfews. Suddenly, everywhere you look, or at least if you're looking in the corporate media, global extremism networks are growing. It's time for Global Cop to take the gloves off again, root the terrorists out of their hidey holes, and roll out a new official narrative. Well, I guess that's exactly the impression you would get reading and listening to the media. It's exactly it too. It's all fucking a false bunch of just absolute garbage, but what can you do? Actually, there's not much new about it. When you strip away all the silly new acronyms, the new war on domestic terror is basically just a combination of the war on terror narrative and the new normal narrative. A militarization of the so-called new normal and a pathologicalization of the war on terror. Why would global cop want to do that, you ask? I think you know, but I'll go ahead and tell you. See, the problem with the original global war on terror was that it wasn't actually all that global. It was basically just a war on Islamic terrorism. Basically, i.e. resistance to global homo and its ideology. It's non-ideology. You know, the belief you have to believe. Everyone knows. I believe in the existence of freedoms and liberties. Now I'll lock down, Master. Thank you, Master, for my freedoms. Yeah, anyhow, which was fine as long as global homo was just destabilizing and restructuring the greater Middle East. But that was put on hold in 2016 so that global homo could focus on defeating populism. Remember that? When Trump got derailed right off the top? Resistance to global homo and its ideology make an example of Donald Trump and demonize anyone who voted for him, you know, all you deplorables, or just refuse to take part in their free and fair elections, which they have just finished doing in spectacular fashion. So, now it's back to the war on terror business, except for with a whole new cast of terrorists, or technically an expanded cast of terrorists. I rattled off a list, and there is a huge list, everyone knows. Do you oppose global homo? Are you against Coca-Cola sodomy and generally giving Wall Street utter dominion over your people and things? Then you are a terrorist too, son. In short, global homo has simply expanded, recontextualized, or pathologized the war on terror. The war on resistance to global homo and its ideology was always inevitable, of course. A globally homogenic system has no external enemies, as there is no territory outside the system. Its only enemies are within the system, and thus by definition are insurgents, also known as terrorists and extremists. Yeah. These terms are utterly meaningless, obviously. They are purely strategic, deployed against anyone who deviates from global homo's official ideology, which, in case you were wondering, is called normality, or in our current case, new normality. It's new, think, Winston. In earlier times, these terrorists and extremists were known as heretics, apostates, and blasphemers. Today they're known as deniers, e.g. science deniers, COVID deniers, and more recently and more disturbing, reality deniers. This is an essential part of the pathologicalization of the war on terror narrative. The new breed of terrorists do not just hate us for our freedom. They hate us because they hate reality, you see. They are no longer our political or our ideological opponents. They are suffering from a psychiatric disorder. Soviet psychiatry, guys. They no longer need to be argued with or listened to. They need to be treated, re-educated, and deprogrammed until they accept reality, like the Uyghur. If you think I'm exaggerating the totalitarian nature of the new normal war on terror narrative, read the op-ed from the New York Times exploring the concept of a reality czar to deal with our reality crisis. Yeah, go read that for a good time. And this is just the beginning, of course. The consensus, at least in global homo circles, is that the new normal war on domestic terror will probably continue for the next 10 to 20 years, which should provide the global elite with more than enough time to carry out the Great Reset, destroy what's left of human society, and condition the public to get used to living like cringing, neo-feudal peasants who have to ask permission to leave their houses. We're still at the initial shock and awe phase, which they will have to scale back a bit eventually. But just look at how much they've already accomplished. The economic damage is literally incalculable. Millions have been plunged into desperate poverty. Countless independent businesses crushed. Whole industries crippled. Developing countries rendered economically dependent, compliant for the foreseeable future, as billionaires amassed over $1 trillion in wealth, and supranational corporate behemoths consolidated their dominance across the planet. And that's just the economic damage. The attack on society has been even more dramatic and severe. Global homo, in the space of a year, has transformed the majority of the global masses into an enormous, paranoid, totalitarian cult that is no longer capable of even rudimentary reasoning. Yes, because 2 layers of spandex will make you safer. I'm not going to go on about it here, but at this point, you either recognize it or you're in on it. They're actually lining up in parking lots, the double-masked members of this COVIDian cult, to be injected with an experimental vaccine that doesn't stop the disease and doesn't keep you from getting anyone else sick. That they believe will save the human species from a virus that causes mild to moderate symptoms in roughly 95% of those, quote, infected, and that over 99% of the, quote, infected survive. So it's no big surprise that these same mindless cultists are gung-ho for the new normal war on domestic terror and the upcoming globally televised show trial of Donald Trump for inciting insurrection and the ongoing corporate censorship of the internet, and can't wait to be issued their freedom passports, which will allow them to take part in new normal life, double masked, socially distanced, and of course with the proper paperwork. Well, having their every movement and transaction, every word they write on Facebook or in an email or say to someone on their smartphones or in the vicinity of their 5G toasters recorded by Global Homo's intelligence services and their corporate partners, subsidiaries, and assigns, like the banks that are snitching on you now. These people have nothing at all to worry about, as they would never dream of disobeying orders and could not produce an original thought, much less one displeasing the Global Homo, if you held a fake apocalyptic plague to their heads. As for the rest of us, extremists, domestic terrorists, heretics, reality deniers, i.e. anyone criticizing Global Homo or challenging its official narratives and its increasingly totalitarian ideology, regardless of your specific DHS acronyms, I wish I had something hopeful to tell you, but the truth is things aren't looking so good. I guess I'll see you in a quarantine camp or in the psych ward or an offshore detention facility, or I don't know, maybe I'll see you in the streets. Now, the 2021 National Defense Authorization Act, white supremacy and domestic terrorism. The U.S. Capitol has security fencing around it that makes it look like the Green Zone or the presidential palace in Kabul. Is the American population the enemy of this cabal that took over the country, maybe? In early January, Congress overcame a presidential veto and enacted the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2021. The NDAA includes important requirements for how federal agencies address white supremacy and domestic terrorism. Yes, white supremacy is a policy issue that must be put down. The only place that's ever been true is in communist countries. Namely, in Russia it was illegal to say whites are supreme, and in China it's illegal to say anything that's racially insensitive. So we're fucking China now. Which has been brought to the forefront, again, in the light of the recent events at the Capitol. white supremacy made people go to the Capitol and demand a fair election that wasn't rigged? That's funny because the same thing that these people claim as a conspiracy theory on the one hand, Time magazine admits to, that a cabal rigged our fucking election. Huh. The NDA includes provisions mandating certain departments and agencies develop new strategies and implement new programs to better evaluate, analyze, and counter white supremacy abroad, especially with respect to how Moscow supports these and other racially and ethnically motivated terrorists. So if you don't believe in global homo and in diversity, you're a Moscow motivated and funded terrorist. Fuck you. And fuck your nigger-loving nonsense, too. Fuck off. However, the NDAA admits two proposals related to domestic terrorism that were included in earlier versions of the bill. One would have created a national commission on U.S. counterterrorism policy, and the other would have developed a comprehensive report on domestic terrorist risks and threats. These proposals, if implemented, could significantly contribute to how the federal government comprehends, coordinates, and assesses its response to today's threat environment. Today's threat environment. That's the way that these fuckers talk about Afghanistan and Iraq and any other war zone. You're a part of a threat environment, you know. Accordingly, the Biden administration should consider using its existing authorities to implement both proposals as part of its broader framework to combat white supremacy and domestic terrorism. So, even though the proposals aren't actually included in the current bill as passed into law, they should just implement them at any rate. Did you just read that? Understanding white identity, terrorism, globalism. So having a white identity makes you a terrorist. Wanting to be a white man makes you a terrorist automatically. What have I been saying for months? That if you think differently from what communists believe, they will use violence against you. Here we are. In 2020, the U.S. Department of State undertook some measures to acknowledge and address the violence perpetrated by white supremacists outside the United States. The violence perpetuated by white supremacists. This is fucking nonsense. They mean to say anytime any white person did anything, it's white supremacy. That's a fact, too. For instance, in April, the State Department designated a white supremacist group as specially designated global terrorists. Big fucking deal. Oh no! 15 guys in Russia are white supremacists, so all white supremacists are Russian agents. Can you imagine being so stupid that you'll accept that illogic? In addition, in most of its recent country reports on terrorism, the State Department identified REMT and in particular white supremacy. REMT is a Russian... Hold on a second. White supremacy is a threat to the global community. Indicated the department is working with our law enforcement and foreign partners to take concrete actions to address this growing threat. So, people in France wanting to be French is a threat to the State Department. People in Britain wanting to be white British, white Irish, people in Norway wanting to be Norwegian, and the rest. These are threats. They're not differences in policy. They're threats. They have to be put down the same way that jihadis were put down. The NDA requires the State Department to do more. Section 1299F of the NDAA mandates that the State Department develop a strategy for countering white identity terrorism globally. This strategy must include an assessment of the global threat from white identity terrorism abroad, because remember, white identity itself is terroristic. That's the language that they're trying to linguistically program you with here. And address a list of requirements set forth in law, including the following. A plan for using public diplomacy, including by the President, the Secretary of State, and other senior officials to degrade and delegitimize white identity. A process for exposing when and how foreign governments support white identity and ideologies. In other words, those Hungarians are evil because they have an identity as Hungarians and they happen to be white. And you can't have an identity if you're white or you're a terrorist. Same as the Uyghur don't get an identity. I could put in Uyghur identity in here and you'd have the exact language that the communist Chinese discuss the Uyghur in. A plan for engaging with foreign governments, internet service providers, and other relevant technology entities to prevent and limit the spread of white identity. In other words, you can't talk about being white because white people are evil and white people have to whip themselves. Well, of course, the people who are the Steve Skamansky that wrote this is a fucking Eastern European Hebrew. It's amazing. It's almost like the Semites and their fucking mongrel allies are here to take the white man's stuff. There was a guy that said a lot about that once. A strategy for improving information and intelligence sharing with foreign countries. Do you mean China? I mean to say that they want to be able to spy on us directly, using countries like China, North Korea, Syria, and the rest as cutouts. Using terrorist-designated authorities to address white identity terrorism. So what they're trying to say is they're going to use the same exact tactics they've been using on jihadis, black bag prisons, and the rest on white identitarians, because white identity is terrorism. See? The NDA also requires the State Department to incorporate all credible data and information about white identity terrorism in its annual country reports on terrorism. That's crazy because it doesn't require them to keep track of Antifa and left-wing violence. Because remember, Antifa is an idea, and ideas don't commit violence unless they're the wrong ideas and they're held by you. Then you're a white identitarian terrorist. You see? Yeah. Now, Section 1237 of the Act contains similar reporting obligations with respect to how Moscow sponsors and supports white identity terrorism. In particular, Section 1237A mandates that the Director of National Intelligence, in coordination with other federal departments, draft a report describing how Russia supports foreign, radical, and ethnically motivated violent extremist groups and networks. So the law mandates that the Director of Intelligence will issue a report in line with what the law... So Congress is telling the Director of National, tell us what we want to hear, so that we can suppress white people in the United States by pretending that the Russians are the ones that make them want to be white, not biology. Because remember, being white is a mental disease. It's not a biological fact. It's a mental disease, Winston. The metrics and information derived from these NDA reporting requirements will serve as important benchmarks for assessing the effectiveness and progression of the U.S. government strategy and programs for combating white supremacy and other forms of white identity. The version of the NDAA that passed in the House of Representatives in July 2020 included a provision establishing a national commission on the U.S. counterterrorism policy. The commission was comprised of members with significant significant experience and expertise in counterterrorism, diplomacy, law enforcement, the U.S. military, intelligence, human rights, and civil liberties. Because putting down white supremacists is a matter of civil liberties. Taking away some people's civil liberties, the white supremacists, will ensure everyone else gets to live like a good little Chinese slave. Right. Yeah. Now, important to the commission was to examine the evolution of threats facing the United States since the 9/11 attacks from both international and domestic terrorist activities and provide an assessment on the connection between the two. Meaning, everyone in the United States that resists the Zog's bullshit, you're now going to become jihadis. There it is. Now, given the often bifurcated nature in which the federal government addresses international and domestic terrorism, it would be strategically advantageous to have an independent commission analyze and assess the government's foreign and domestic counterterrorism programs and policies holistically. In other words, they want to create the KGB so that you all will live in a security state, just like the Uyghur live in Xinjiang province in China. According to the Biden administration, should consider establishing a formal advisory committee to perform the functions designated to the National Commission on the U.S. Counterterrorism Policy, Section 1285. It's funny because Section 1285 was not included in the final version of the bill, but they still should do exactly what isn't in the bill to do. Isn't that crazy? It's common for presidents to issue directives establishing councils and committees, task force, blah, 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 irrespective of the law. So Biden can do that. Don't worry. It's okay. Yeah. So, Basically, they want to identify all known domestic terror groups. They're going to start right out with the GOP. You think I'm kidding? We'll get to the next story soon. So basically, guys, any directive issued by the incoming administration to implement required similar to those outlined in the snitch reporting parts of the bill should focus on having law enforcement and intelligence communities work in concert to develop a mutual and comprehensive understanding of significant domestic terrorist threats in the United States. In other words, they want to use intelligence means to bring the law to your house to put you on trial in basically what the fuck are communist show trials, and that's if they even put you on trial. Because they'll just hold you in Gitmo and say that just like the people in Gitmo, you're an unarmed enemy combatant and shit. Now, fellas, how about this? To authorize, now this is Senate Bill 894 to authorize dedicated domestic terrorism office within the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation to analyze and monitor domestic terrorist activity and require the federal government to take steps to prevent domestic terrorism. Right. Okay. White supremacists. Congress finds that white supremacists and far right-wing extremists are the most significant domestic terror threat facing the United States. Yeah? And who are these white supremacists and far right-wing extremists, you say? Well, right on cue. The Republican Party is radicalizing against democracy. The GOP is moderating on policy questions, even as it grows more dangerous on core questions of democracy and the rule of law. Now, this is Chris Hayes, right? And everyone knows who he is. But I don't care about the goon. But what I do know is that the beliefs that he's going to say here are the general beliefs of the elite. The Republican Party is radicalizing against democracy. Democracy is bullshit. Democracy is exactly what the Chinese say that they have in China. Oh, my holy democracy. We have a fucking elective republic, not a motherfucking democracy. Instead of organizing its coalition around shared policy goals, the GOP has chosen to emphasize hatred and fear of its political opponents, who they warn will destroy their supporters in the country. You mean the same people who are calling the Republicans radicalized against democracy, i.e. enablers of terrorism, would actually think to try to destroy the Republican Party and the country that the Republican Party stands for? Because as far as these Democrats view, the Republican Party is the party of white people, and America is a white fucking country that they hate because it's a white fucking country. Save that bullshit about black, yellow, red. Fuck off, heretic. Nobody gives a fuck about that shit. I want a white country. Nobody wants to live with diversity. Now, let's see, these Manichean stakes are used to justify every effort to retain power. It's funny how the GOP has to justify retaining power, but the Democrats just automatically should have power. It's almost as if one party is the party. Yeah. And by keeping power, keeping power the GOP's highest purpose. A political party has no purpose but to have power. That's correct. We are living with a deadly example of just how far those efforts can go. One of our people being shot in the Capitol by a scumbag lowlife assassin proves that you should be able to suppress us as being a threat to you? Oh, I see. So you're a pimp that's upset that your fucking whores might fight back, huh? Yeah, at the same time, the Republican Party is moderating on policy. On a host of issues, the left is winning. What? It's funny, on top, Democrats have established a narrow but surprisingly durable electoral majority. And how did they get that electoral majority? Huh? Does anybody got any information on Holy Ghost? Basically, guys, what they're upset about is that you won't play their fucking game. And so, because the average person because the average person has no interest in this stuff, see, you're a terrorist. And again, this is Chris Wallace saying that the Republican Party itself is a radicalizing agent that is encouraging domestic violence, right? Now, Nicole Wallace seemingly floats the idea using drone strikes against domestic terrorists. Yeah, that's right. The number of hate groups declined last year, but hate did not. Yeah. So, numbers of the active hate groups in the U.S. has declined according to an annual count by the Southern Poverty Law Center, but unfortunately it found no accompanying decline in hate and extremism. So, the number of active hate groups and allegedly their membership declined, but hate itself went up. So each of us have more hatred now? I mean, how do they measure this shit empirically? I just kind of wonder, right? Because, you see, according to the SPLC, new white nationalists and neo-Nazi organizations, meaning any group that are white people organizing for white people, by white people, because of white people, have become more diffuse in their membership. The far right remains highly mobilized and extremely dangerous. The far right burnt down all these cities. The far right murdered people in the fucking streets because they were wearing a manga hat. Fuck you. With the number of threats from the far right as high as in years before the Oklahoma City bombing. Because all you all know, you're all a bunch of terrorists. Said some random nobody from the SPLC. Last week, the Department of Homeland Security released a bulletin warning of a heightened threat environment across the United States. A heightened threat environment. That's the exact language that they use in the Green Zone in Iraq. Okay. The number of active hate groups tracked in 2020 by the SPLC was 834. But the SPLC notes that the numbers are still historically high, hovering above 800 for the duration of the Trump presidency. Ooh. The number of such hate groups spiked to more than 1,000 after the election of Barack Obama, the country's first black pretender. Listen to this. The SPLC defines a hate group as an organization or collection of individuals that, based on its official statements or principles, the statements of its leaders or its activities, basically meaning how the SPLC translates what you say and think, has beliefs or practices that attack or malign an entire class of people, typically for their immutable characteristics. You mean, hold on a second. You mean being a drag queen is immutable, so if I say trannies aren't real, I'm attacking them for an immutable characteristic? Being born the wrong sex is an immutable characteristic, huh? An organization does not need to have engaged in criminal conduct or have followed their speech with actual unlawful action to be labeled a fucking hate group. So you don't have to actually do anything hateful or illegal to be lumped into this category that they'll now spy on you and snitch to the government on you. KGB, here we come, bro. Let's see. First was the COVID pandemic, which meant that some groups didn't gather in person and didn't seem to do anything online. And second, more groups have been kicked off of mainstream social media sites, making them more difficult for the SPLC to track. So as we suppress you, we're going to assume that you need to be suppressed more, because not being able to track you means that you need to be tracked even more. Yeah. A major reason for this is that the Klan's name has become extremely toxic. Everyone's a Klan member to these people, you know. Yeah. If you're a Klan member and your employer finds out, you're all but guaranteed to be fired. So, if you belong to organizations that the SPLC doesn't approve of, you don't get to fucking work. But here are you see, but there's been no accompanying decline in support for the Klan's ideas. Because if you well know by looking at the media, you can totally see how the Klan is running everything, right, guys? New far-right hate groups like the Proud Boys have formed. You know, the one with a half-breed in charge. And with the rise of social media, people aren't necessarily becoming official members of a group, but instead are actually talking with people and maybe sharing ideas. Many extremist ideologues are not formal members of any organization. Online platforms allow individuals to interact with hate and anti-government groups without joining them, as well as to form connections and talk with other like-minded people. People are allowed to talk. You know? When formalized groups are infiltrated by law enforcement or journalists, their internal communications can be leaked and open up the organizers of criminal charges. Extremists can now join Facebook groups and Telegram channels and feel like they are participating in a movement in the same manner that more formal affiliations offered in the past. But if extremist gatherings have moved online, their violent actions are happening in the physical world. There's, notice this, most of the people storming the Capitol building may not be card-carrying members of the Ku Klux Klan or any other anti-government group, but they harbor extremist beliefs, and belief equals action to communists, remember? As an example of trends in far-right extremism, Miller points to the Boogaloo movement. Its far-right adherents are united in their opposition to firearms restrictions. Their belief that the United States is moving towards a civil war, and the civil war is necessary to purge the U.S. of tyranny. Yeah, and? You mean, so they have the same basic beliefs as the founders of the United fucking States? Okay. Men allegedly associated with the movement have been charged with crimes. Big fucking deal. You can charge a fucking ham sandwich with a crime. It doesn't mean anything's actually been done that's morally or culpably wrong. Suck a dick. But there are very few people, if anyone, who could be considered a leader of the movement, and there's no real organizational structure outside of a couple of online hubs where people associate, so we have to work really hard to spy on them. So they don't want you to organize, but they need you to organize so you can spy on them. Yeah. One big worry is that the ideas, language, and violence of far-right extremists will continue to seep into the general discourse. Or that what's going to happen, Miller, is that regular people are going to get tired of your bullshit and these so-called extreme ideas will seem reasonable because the normal that you're trying to impose on these people is it's slavery. Yeah. Yep. And now, listen, my concern is that their form of politics where they use violence and intimidation to silence their political adversaries is going to continue to be normalized. Is she talking about Antifa when they show up and burn down businesses and fuck people's homes up? Yeah. She noted that some Republican elected officials have seemingly endorsed the idea of a civil war and have used threatening language to talk about their own colleagues across the aisle. Threatening language! Threatening language! Notice, anything but utter capitulation of these people is a threat. Yeah. The SPLC report makes a number of policy recommendations. Let's see. Among them is establishing offices within DHS, Department of Justice, and the FBI to monitor, investigate, and prosecute cases of domestic terrorism. The report also calls for improved federal hate crime prevention. They want to do pre-crime. They want to arrest you for pre-crime. Yep. It recommends a focus on programs that steer young people away from dangerous ideas, and that such programs be housed at the Department of Education and Health and Human Services. In other words, they're going to use CPS and the schools to steal and indoctrinate your fucking children because you don't believe the right things, little extremist. No. Former CIA officer, treat domestic extremism as an insurgency, insurgency. Yeah, when it comes to domestic extremists such as those who stormed the Capitol, a longtime CIA officer argues that the U.S. should treat them as an insurgency. That means using counterinsurgency tactics similar in some ways to those used in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Huh. Yeah. This random guy served as CIA station chief for Pakistan and Afghanistan in 2001. He wanted to become the CIA's Iraq mission manager and then director of the CIA Counterterrorism Center from 2004 to 2006. In other words, he's an utter loser who's never done anything but waste your money and now wants to put you in a KGB-style slave camp that he'll oversee, and if you object, he'll kill you like a fucking jihadi insurgent. We may be witnessing the dawn of a sustained wave of violent insurgency within our own country, perpetrated by our own countrymen. You're not my countrymen. You're a dual citizen fucking traitor. And without national action orders, extremists who seek a social apocalypse are capable of producing endemic political violence of a sort not seen in this country since Reconstruction. Oh, that's just, you mean when you all burnt down a whole bunch of people's homes and harmed them? And so the Klan was formed to push you Yankees the fuck out of people's fucking lives? Yeah, that's right. Now, did you just hear that? Basically, if they can't use the exact sort of tactics that they use on third world insurgencies, they can't be safe from you. Do you understand? Now, do you understand what I'm trying to say, guy? You know? No. We're at the point of a politicized military. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin signs military stand-down memo to address extremism. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is directing commanding officers and supervisors throughout the military to institute a one-day stand-down within the next 60 days to address concerns of extremism with the military forces. Yeah. Yep. The memo will require military leaders at all levels to select one day to lead discussions focused on the importance of our oath of office, a description of impermissible behaviors, and procedures for reporting suspect or actual extremist behaviors. So being conservative and not believing in democracy, diversity, inclusion, those are impermissible. Because what you really swore, your oath of office, you're not in office, you know. We will not tolerate actions that go against the fundamental principles of the oaths we share, including actions associated with extremists or dissident ideologies. You're not allowed to dissent anymore. Service members, DoD, civilian employees, and all those who support our mission deserve an environment free of discrimination, hate, and harassment. So in other words, service members will live in a leftist bubble, and if they don't, they'll live in a leftist bubble. Austin writes in the memo that the stand-down is the first step in what I believe must be a concerted effort to better educate ourselves and our people as to the scope of this problem, the scope of people not believing the official ideology, and to develop sustainable ways to eliminate the corrosive effects of other ideologies and other ways of thinking have on the workforce. That's what he means to say when he says extremist ideology and conduct, other ways of thinking and other ways of acting. We owe it to the oath we took and to trust the American people we have in our institution. The stand-down order was first announced by the Pentagon on Wednesday. The department said that Austin and the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff met with civilian leaders and service chiefs to discuss the problem of extremism in the military, an issue that has come under growing scrutiny. After the arrest of several current serving members and veterans for the January 6th protest at the Capitol. According to the Pentagon, Austin said in the meeting that although the number of service members who adhered to such ideologies were small, they were not as small as anyone would like. So one is too many. One of the challenges here and one of the reasons why he wants to do this is we don't know the full breadth and depth of it. We don't really know how many there extremists there are, but we know that there are white people, so there must be extremists, see? And it is racial. Any of you try to say, why'd you gotta be able? Because it is about fucking race, you cucktard, colorblind, Martin Luther King loving pussy. Fucking faggot pussy. That's why. Because it is about race. Because race is real. Whereas your cucktard beliefs, they're imaginary shit. I can measure race. Can I measure things like inclusivity or tolerance? Fuck off. No. So, Kirby noted that military personnel are prohibited from actively advocating for or participating in supremacist, extremist, or criminal gang activity, ideology, or causes. So, believing in anything that isn't their official belief is criminal now. That's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it so you have to have right think, Winston, and wrong think will put you in prison. The prevalence of extremist and white supremacist ties among service members was expected to be an urgent issue. Yeah. But not their prevalence of Antifa or, ties. No. It's white supremacists, man. Only white supremacists are bad. If you're anybody else, you can believe Hindus are supreme. You can believe the Han are supreme. You can believe Jews are better than whites. But you can't believe that white people are supreme because that's Adolf Hitler. Yeah. A recent NPR analysis found that nearly 1 in 5 charged in the aftermath of the Capitol siege appear to have a military history. 2 weeks after the Capitol protest, roughly a dozen National Guard troops were dismissed from inauguration duties, at least 2 of whom for alleged links to extremism. They're purging the military. Pentagon officials say they are still trying to gather more information about extremist behavior among its members, meaning they want to spy on you completely and know everything about everything you do. The Marine Corps says it has 16 cases of substantiated extremist behavior in its ranks over the past 3 years, mostly regarding posts on social media. Brigadier General George Rowell said those investigated were younger Marines, but there was no immediate detail on the circumstances or whether any of the Marines were kicked out. Who cares? Last year, the FBI informed the Pentagon of 143 investigations into current and former military members, with 68 pertaining to domestic terrorism cases. Let's see. In 2019, a survey of the Military Times found that 36% of its active duty readers surveyed had been seen evidence of white supremacist and racist ideologies in the military. You mean the 40% of the military that are fags, bitches, and Semites, and Negroes said that the rest of the military are a bunch of racist white people? Wow, I'm shocked. Wow, totally shocked. Now, you reckon how they're going to make all this stand? Oh, right here. Gun control bill from Representative Sheila Jackson Lee would create National Firearm Registry requiring licensing. Yeah, the bill would make it a crime to possess a firearm or ammunition without the new license. Right. They also wants to, they would create a National Firearm Registry, set minimum gun ownership at age 21, and require both licensing and psychological evaluations to own a gun. Meaning, if you have the wrong way of thinking, you can't be armed because you don't think the way they want you to. Only people who believe what they believe can be trusted with a weapon, Winston, because it's obvious that only people like them should be able to resist or impose. Because remember, according to Chairman Mao, power grows out of the barrel of a gun, and that's absolutely fucking correct. No. Now, this is it also requires gun owners to pay for insurance and bans ammunition of .50 caliber or greater, except for law enforcement and a limited range of security personnel. Oh, so the only people allowed to have any type of long range, reach out and kill you weapons are going to be the people who are going to suppress you, little peasants. Right. No. Gun owners would have to complete a government training course, have a clean record, and register their firearms with the federal government. Registry information would be available to law enforcement from the local to the federal level, as well as the U.S. military. The display of an antique firearm in one's home would require a federal firearms license and an additional license under the proposed law. There would also be a license for military-style weapons, which basically means any magazine-fed semi-automatic weapon, which the bill defines as a broad range of semi-automatic rifles and handguns, as well as some shotguns. Anyone who has ever been hospitalized due to mental illness, drug or alcohol abuse, homicide or suicidal thoughts, or a brain disease would not be eligible to obtain a firearms license. Yeah. The psychological evaluation process would also take into account the psychological condition of other members of the licensee's households, current and former spouses, relatives, and associates. So you got to have the right friends, or you can't be a part of this, bull. Now, this is absolutely insane, guys. But, hey, man, why not, bro? Why not, bro? Because you ask, how can all this be happening, man? Well, because President Biden is a figurehead of the left-wing insurrection against the American people. The Democrats and the media that serve them are like addicts looking for their next fix, and their drug of choice over the past 5 years has been orange man bad, hate white people. Yeah, if you're conservative and you voted for anything but Democrats, they want you demonized by the impeachment proceedings. That's right, these impeachment proceedings aren't really about Trump. They're about grinding Trump's voters' faces in it like they're bad dogs. You know? And they want you to believe things will never get any better. Basically, they want you to believe they have the foot on your face, boot on your face. Now, you know, I mean, the real reason is this, man. The reason they want this Senate trial is to distract you. If you weren't distracted, you'd realize Biden was a senile, corrupt old geezer with no real authority at all, you know? You understand what I'm trying to say? Now, that's just reality. That's how it is. That's how it sits. I don't like it. Not in the least, guys. But the main reason is they don't want you to realize this. I mean, Biden is barely awake. He doesn't function. The man's brain dead. And they also want this trial to take up your mind because they don't want you to think about the fact that we have a Congress who don't care about protecting American jobs, your safety, your health care, education. Because if they did, they'd immediately stop bringing in third worlders and stop with this immigrant resettlement bullshit. But that's this, they don't. Well, that's it, you know. And that's how it sits, guys. Is it good? Is it bad? It just is, you know. All right, fellas. I got some stuff I got to go do. Eventually, I'm going to get done with all this. I got at least one or two more of these I'm going to read, and then I'm going to start doing some editing. So, until I get back. Hello, folks. How y'all doing today? And we're back. Eventually, we will actually get this 180-page monstrosity dealt with. Remember, we come up with every day, just so you understand, somewhere in the range of a file about that thick of information on the enemy every day. That's on a normal day. On a high traffic day. You know, I read you guys 80, 90 pages. I might have 300, you know. That eventually still has to all be kind of looked through, tacked in, you know, some kind of little mental cross system, you know, so it can be right. You know, well, because somebody's got to know the facts and the figures and do the membering, huh? That's right, bro. So I'm a little unpleasant. Well, tough shit. Here's my exact view on that. So you got that. Here it sits right here. I'm not here to be your buddy or your friend. Yeah. Those of you who are friendly with me and we're cool, great, great. Those that were not, who gives a shit? You don't have to like me. All you have to do is go, oh, well, here's a bunch of news information. Now, you can listen to what I say on it. Go find the information yourself from when I read things like National Guard presence in Capitol that cost American taxpayers $483 million. I would say, well, he just said taxpayers, 483 Capitol. Wow, and then go get news on that and see if what I said was correct. So, beyond liking or disliking me, fuckhead, which is an ancillary, secondary, unimportant matter, you can gain enlightenment and understanding and some ability to have a basis of truth, a narrative that isn't controlled by your fucking enemies. What I am is I'm the gateway to wrong think. So before you want to come through this gateway, you should consider it like the gateway to hell in Dante, because that's exactly how the liberals are going to treat you. You're going to be on the way to a city of woe. You're going to be part of a forsaken race. And when you're down here in Hades' kingdom, they're going to utterly, utterly destroy everything of your memory and disparage everything about you. Can you hang? Okay, great. If you can, then come on down and listen to what I got to say. It's free. There's no cult, fee, hidden plans, t-shirts, cups, merc, any of that shit here that just doesn't exist. All I'm here to do is exactly what I said I'm to do. Have my fucking say. Because I will never be bound again. Why and how it don't matter. But in a very good analogy is the Fenris wolf. At one point I was bound, weak and small. And then that chain got snapped. And if you think I'm ever going back on that chain again. Now do you understand? But you say, but Curtis, you're a Christian. That doesn't mean I don't know Norse mythology better than most y'all. No! We have National Guard standing around a razor wire fence at the U.S. Capitol, and the point is that the National Guard presence in the Capitol is going to cost you guys $500 million. Okay? Now, this is from January 15th. It's a little old, but as you all know, I'm not trying to get the scoops and get you cash. I'm trying to provide information as a wide-set nature to both, one, give you a narrative where you're not in this KGB Communist Party bullshit that they're spitting out of the media 24/7, and two, again, just to have my say, and three, well, let's just be honest. If it's going to have to be the silly cucky duck conservatives or these crazy-ass wannabe Maoist Democrats, I don't know, it isn't really exactly a choice, is it, fella? Now, but anyhow, in Washington, D.C., and in the 50 states capitals, basically, we're starting to go to the green zone model. You know, in Iraq, in Baghdad, that big capital fortress in the middle of the river there. What do you think about that? What do you think about it when we got to have crusader castles in our own capital in order to protect the feudal lords in D.C. from the starving peasants? It's like, you know, remember when everybody laughed at Alex Jones when he said, they're going to turn it into a two-tier global feudalism? And I was like, wow, that's one of those things Alex got it pretty bag on with. He was right about that. I could see that way back that he was right. And everyone laughed at him. It was, you can't go from a first world democracy, industrial economy to feudalism, because, you know, right? Because they're thinking of feudalism as an economic system, like in the same way the Marxists used to think about it until the cultural Marxists took over. For them, Marxist economics aren't important. What is important is Engels' social justice, social warfare philosophies on private property, family, and patriarchy, I think it might be, is like the seminal work of Engels in this case. It's a fusion of Marx and Engels' ideas that Engels edited after Marx's death. Do you understand? And basically a good percentage of it is Engels using Marx to like highlight off his own views. You understand? Another one, if you want to understand Engels, go look at the history of the Peasants' Rebellion in Germany. It's a tract that Engels wrote, and you get almost all of the points of attack you have now. Family is bad, patriarchy is bad, tradition's bad, customs bad, being proud of the past is bad because the past is icky, and anyone who wants the past is an evil reactionary. You see? Right. So, these people here have basically come to being locked into their own capital, behind barricades, the same as Chairman Mao and his gang, the same as the Soviets behind the KGB, the same as the East Germans under the Stasi, the same as the Hungarians under their little communist utopia. Do I need to continue here? The same as Maduro in Venezuela, in Venezuela. The same as any tin pot dictator anywhere, really. Huh. So, the United States is most free when the National Guard are in the capital suppressing the peasants like it's a Central African dictatorship. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure, Chief. Whatever you say, man. And of course, remember, again, the FBI is warning it's all 50 states. So what they're saying is there's an apparatchik class. That's the sort of functionaries of the party and the government. And there's the rest of you little people. You're in Blade Runner or the Soviet Union. Which do you wish to be in? One, you'll be a little more free, but you'll have nothing. And the other, you'll be a lapdog, but at least they'll put fillings in your teeth. If you don't talk bad, but if you do, Ivan, it's off to those camps. A day in the life of Ivan Desenovich. It's actually a really interesting book. It's not very long. You can read it in most of you in a day or two. You know, right? It's a Solzhenitsyn work, and it's much more accessible to most of you than Gulag Archipelago, you know? Way more condensed, you're like right there. It's just one day in the guy's life in the camp, and it's probably Alexander's own life, but he's, he does a very good job of taking himself out of it and making this character come to life for you. He's a very good writer, actually. Now, the Pentagon revealed Monday, and this is again, it's back in January, that the cost to American taxpayers of having thousands of National Guard members in the nation's capital is an estimated $483 million. And yet, for all that, they had to have civilians bring these guys pizza, and they made them sleep in a parking garage. So they're going to charge you to be under the boot of a dictatorship, a praetorian, the same as any African military, especially since now they're doing the political purge. So what you're looking at is the military of Zimbabwe charging the people of Zimbabwe to occupy the capital. It's not much different, folks. It isn't. I don't think I'm gloating. Dudes, if there's anything that I've ever wanted to been wrong about, it's some of these predictions I make of these nature, okay, bro? I don't like being an oracle that can see over all this. You think it's fun? Like, ooh, boy, no. But it is, and it's sick, man. It's become absolutely just bizarre, dude. Now, that figure covers the National Guard troop presence from the 6th of January, when federal authorities first requested them, through mid-March, now. They want to keep them at least there till March, when 5,000 National Guard members are slated to be in Washington, D.C. So, 5,000 select Praetorians will be in Washington, D.C. That's about the number of actual troops they have in Afghanistan on books still. The contractors are about double that. But, okay? And just about as many as they still have going on in the whole area of Syria and Iraq. The actual ones, not the ones that are on static defense inside the green zone. Yeah. So, you follow me, boys. This is the Praetorians. The Pentagon authorized 7,000 on January 6th and then 19,000 more for the inauguration. So, it took 26,000 troops, which is 3 times more troops than are in Afghanistan and Iraq combined, to ensure that you could be kept safely away from the inauguration of a president that's so popular that he was elected, allegedly, by more votes than anyone in history. And to say otherwise is a conspiracy, even though I'm going to get to really soon here an article that states that there was, in fact, a coup carried out to make sure that Trump lost and Biden won, and that this military suppression is the exact sort of thing you would expect after a coup in the third world. But I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist and just a lunatic, hateful Nazi and stuff, folks. Well, I guess it's better to be a Nazi than if someone who can't see. You know what I mean? Now, the number reduced to 7,000 by the end of January and is further expected to be reduced to 5,000 by mid-March. So we still got about 6,000 troops, let's just say, in the capital of the United States, occupying our capital in the exact way that we'd be occupying a third world country if we just toppled their regime. And as I've read already earlier up in here many times already, the language being used by both the Democrats, the media, and the military is such that American citizens are now the object of suspicion and hatred to the point where it'll be like those people in Iraq. Drive too close to the checkpoint, you just get shot up, bro. You halt now and you're told, stand right on halt, or you get shot, bro. Because there's people and then there's you plebs, bro. You understand? The people aren't you. No, the people are the people inside the buildings making the rules, bro. Just like in the Soviet Union, my friend. Or another communist country that we're not supposed to mention because they got their hands so far up all our politicians that, our government may as well have the title Pinocchio, not a real boy. And anyhow, Army leaders said last month that the National Guard presence through mid-March was requested by the Capitol Police. So now the Capitol Police can request the National Guard to come into the Capitol even though the Capitol isn't a state? What? The request came after the breach of the Capitol building and the tumult that happened on January 6th. The breach? They're trying to act as if you showing up at your own Capitol is exactly the same as the Jung Horde coming to burn down your city. Do you understand? Well, if a bunch of, let's just say in Afghanistan, the government had done something fucked up in the hills and pissed off those hill people, yeah? And those hill people come down to Kabul and go to the Legislative Assembly and go all sideways. Breach is the exact word they would use for those people getting inside their own legislative chamber, whether there's violence or not. And, in fact, this did happen, and as I recall, they shot a bunch of women, and there was just a bunch of shit, and none of them were found to be associated with terrorist organizations or to have any weapons of any kind. In fact, when you got into the even deeper news of it and found like the Google translations of the local news, the men had actually checked their weapons in with the security at the building like you're supposed to do in these parts of the world, because every man in Afghanistan has a fucking weapon, bro. Every man. If you don't, you're somebody else's bitch or you're dead. That's it. You know? So, I mean, you see how the wording is such that you are now the Taliban. You are now Baathists. You are now jihadis, you know? And the other wording, the non-wording, the sort of legal wording, is that of Soviet psychiatry, man, where anyone who won't believe in their reality is sick. And they need their children taken away and their jobs taken. Because sick people can't work, you know. They got to go to a special place, otherwise known as a gulag, my friend. Or a Gaolong camp for the Chinamen, you know. Yeah. Okay, so 2 National Guard sources told Breitbart News that the National Guard presence is tied to the impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump. The impeachment trial is slated to begin on Tuesday. So they need to have a Praetorian Guard present in the Capitol so that they can conduct a fucking shady, shoddy, half-assed, wannabe, almost kind of constitutional hearing where they don't even have the Chief Justice presiding. They have another fucking senator presiding over the impeachment of someone who's already out of office. What? They're passing a bill of attainder, man. Go look up bill of attainder. It's basically a legislative act that says you're guilty of this, this, and that, and it bypasses a trial and gets right to the legislature deems. Right. Now, Republican lawmakers have demanded to know why the National Guard is still in Washington. Senator Tom Cotton has said, as a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, he is not aware of any threats necessitating their continued presence in the capital region, and that it was time to send them home. Well, thank you, Tom. I mean, there's very few things you've ever done that I actually appreciate, but okay. You know, I'm not too big to say when I think someone's done what I think is right. The National Guard troop presence caused a scandal after a National Guard unit protecting the Capitol building was reportedly told to take their breaks in a parking garage. Meaning, we don't want to see you plebs out here on the streets. Unless you're out here to die for us when you're on your time, go hide underground. Like Roman slaves. At night, they'd put them underground. Photos circulating online of National Guard members reclining on the parking garage cement floors under bright fluorescent lighting, reportedly sharing one power outlet among 5,000 troops, as well as one bathroom with 2 toilets. And that's what cost you $483 million, my friends. 2 toilets for these bros, $483 million. I'm thinking that the priority isn't to care for the troops or to care for the American citizens. It's to make sure that Congress is set aside as special, and everybody knows that Congress is different than the rest of you. They're the nobility and you're the commoners, you know. Now, meanwhile, you know, I like President Trump in some instances. Trump says Biden is controlled by people in dark shadows and compares police violence to golf. Vague conspiracy theory revolved around people you've never heard of. Woo. Donald Trump used a by turns bizarre and inflammatory interview with Fox News host Laura Ingraham on Monday to repeat numerous falsehoods. He said things they didn't like. Orange man bad and shit. And put a vague conspiracy theory about shadowy people supposedly pulling Joe Biden's strings. That's not conspiracy theory. Biden's been bought since the 70s. He's a sellout fucking fold-back punk. No. In a discussion about Joe Biden, Mr. Trump claimed that his opponent was under someone else's thumb. He's not controlling anything. Of course he's not. He can barely goddamn stand up straight. Who do you think are pulling Joe Biden's strings, asked Miss Ingram. Is it former Obama officials? Mr. Trump declined to elaborate. People you've never heard of. People that are in the dark shadows. People that are part of the deep state. People that are tied in with China. the Zionists, the media establishment, international banking, international finance, corporations, and big tech. Those people. Ms. Ingram pressed him for further details. What does that mean? That sounds like conspiracy theories. Dark shadows. What is that? Well, it's an analog to the dark winter that we're supposed to have. That itself is an exercise about a biological attack and the sort of way that people's minds would be shaped about the attack if you read the dark winter PDF that I actually found. At any rate, people you never heard of. There are people that are on the streets. There are people that are controlling the streets. Uh-oh. We had someone get on a plane from a certain city this weekend, and in that plane, it was almost completely loaded with thugs wearing these dark uniforms, with black uniforms, with gear and this and that. They're on a plane. Where is this? Let's see. I'll tell you sometime, but it's under investigation right now. They came from a certain city, and this person was coming to the Republican National Convention, and there were like 7 people on the plane like this person, and there were a lot of people who were on the plane to do big damage. I see. He then suggested that riots and Black Lives Matter protests are being funded by some very stupid rich people. I don't know if they're stupid, but there is being funded by some very rich people. Remember the 259 corporations list that I read off? Okay. Let me see. Who don't realize that if their things succeed, which it won't, they'll be thrown to the wolves. Well, they think that they're going to be the leader of the pack, bro. The conspiracy theory, as expounded by Mr. Trump, tracks closely with a range of viral posts from this summer that warned of planes and buses full of Antifa descending on American city to attack their residents. There's no conspiracy theory about that. That happened. Shit. You know? The absolutely correct information has been chronicled by Marty Kelly, who has covered far-right groups and online magazine Wonkette under the name of Dr. Zoom. Oh, so this is the guy running cover for Antifa's actions while he's claiming that Antifa's not doing what he's denying. So if Dr. Zoom denies that Antifa did a thing, it's misinformation for you to believe your own fucking eyes. Yeah. Trump's dark vision appears to echo QAnon, a sprawling conspiracy theory movement whose followers believe in a shadowy, powerful cabal whose members, said to include everyone from Hillary Clinton to Oprah Winfrey, have for decades been trafficking children to sexually abuse them and harvest chemicals from their brains. No, mostly they say that there's a cabal people wanting to control and dominate us, and that there is a subset of those people that are into just these things here. You see Epstein's Island for more on that. This cabal is said to control the American deep state, which it does, and which Donald Trump is locked in secret combat. Well, he's been defeated by him, but you get the idea. So, yeah. Mr. Trump said police are under siege and compared police shootings of black criminals to choking on the putting green. Huh, yeah, that's about right. I mean, what I'm trying to understand is why should I care about, I can't breathe, bro, when that dude was a pimp, rapist, piece of shit, porn star, dope addict. I'm glad that nigger's dead. Say it straight up to your face. I won't weep over wholly dead black men. Thank you, though. So, meanwhile, remember how there's a conspiracy theory that that says that basically, you know, that there was a shadowy cabal that tried to take power. Well, this is from Time magazine, guys. The secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. The secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. The nation was braced for chaos. Liberal groups had vowed to take the streets, planning protests across the country. Liberal groups. What? In a poll before Election Day, 75% of Americans voiced concern about violence. After 10 months of Antifa burning cities down, killing people, and causing fucking mayhem, they were concerned about violence? Say it ain't so, Time magazine. Notice how deceptive that is. Now, To President Trump, something felt amiss. Now listen to this. It was all very, very strange. In a way, Trump was right. There was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protests and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Both surprises were the result of an informal alliance between left-wing activists and business titans. The pact was formalized in a terse, little-noticed joint statement of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO, published on Election Day. Both sides would come to see it as a sort of implicit bargain inspired by the summer's massive, sometimes destructive, racial justice protests, in which the forces of labor came together with the forces of capital to keep the peace and oppose Trump's assault on democracy. So the forces of labor came together with the forces of capital to keep the peace? So Kenosha was peaceful when it was burnt to the ground, and Trump trying to stop these places from being burnt was an assault on democracy. Fucking straight up, full clown world, man. The handshake between business and labor was just one component of a vast, cross-partisan campaign to protect the election, an extraordinary shadow effort, dark shadows and shit, dedicated not to winning the vote, but to ensuring it would be free, fair, credible, and uncorrupted. So they put it in an extraordinary shadow effort to do everything they could have done in the open, but of course they didn't do any of this with the intention of trying to win, and to say so would be really, really bad. For more than a year, a loosely organized coalition of operatives scrambled to shore up America's institutions as they came under simultaneous attack from a remorseless pandemic and an autocratically inclined president. What? So our president is an autocrat because So America's institutions are under threat because of a disease that kills basically no one, and because there was an election that these people didn't like the result of that resulted in Trump being president? Wow, that's crazy. And if he was an autocrat, why did he allow the courts and Congress to stymie his will? Anyone? Though much of this activity took place on the left, it was separate from the Biden campaign and crossed ideological lines, with crucial contributions by nonpartisan and conservative actors. Ooh, remember when I always say that there's a uniparty and that they hate all of you? Wow, huh? The scenario the shadow campaigners were desperate to stop was not a Trump victory. No, it wasn't a Trump victory they were worried about. It was an election so calamitous that no result could be discerned at all. That's right. A failure of the central act of democratic self-governance that has been a hallmark of America since its founding. So that's why they created all the rules, and the media has helped to sabotage the election exactly like they did. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's totally sensible, isn't it? Imagine this doublethink, man. Their work touched every aspect of the election. They got states to change voting systems, laws, and help secure hundreds of millions in public and private funding so that, of course, these left-wing private fundings, they didn't try to swing the vote their way. No one would put money into voting systems and laws and security with an eye to their own interest. No. They fended off voter suppression lawsuits. So basically what they did is they tried to get rid of voter ID laws so that the illegal aliens that they were mobilizing couldn't be stopped from voting. Recruited armies of poll workers. Armies. If the Republicans had an army of poll workers, wouldn't the same Time magazine call that some kind of coup? And got millions of people to vote by mail for the first time. Even a lot of dead ones. They successfully pressured social media companies to take a harder line against disinformation. What? What are you trying to? Social media companies were already hell bent on ensuring that the Trumpites could never express themselves again. After 2016, it was understood that social media was going to suppress people. So this is nonsense. And use data-driven strategies to fight viral smears, or what I like to call censored people, and kicked them off the internet so that no data could be seen except for the data they wanted you to see. AKA Communist China style, my friend. Let's see. They executed national public awareness campaigns that helped Americans understand how the vote count would unfold over days or weeks. Oh, you mean they astroturfed in the idea that the election should take weeks rather than the single day it has since the beginning of basically forever? Right, guy. Okay, after Election Day, they monitored every pressure point to ensure that Trump could not overturn the result. Well, hold on a second now. But why would they? If Trump had won, wouldn't Biden be overturning the result by them declaring Biden to be the winner? See how it always assumes the language that only Donald Trump could be against democracy. And the Democrats, because they have demo in their names, are obviously Democratic. You know? The untold story of the election is that thousands of people of both parties who accomplished the triumph of American democracy at its very foundation, says Norm Eisen. Norm Eisen, a prominent lawyer and former Obama administration official who recruited Republicans and Democrats to the board of the Voter Protection Program. Is that like the Israeli-ran Palestinian Protection Program, otherwise known as the Gaza open-air prison? For Trump and his allies were running their own campaign to spoil the election. See, these guys were trying to protect the election. Trump was the evil guy trying to make it bad. See how these guys are the good guys and the light, and they only want to do what's right. But Trump, he's always trying to just do bad stuff. The president spent months insisting that mail ballots were a Democrat plot, and they were. They just told you above that they were, and that the election would be rigged, and it was. His henchmen at the state level sought to block their use. Notice they have loyal operatives, but Trump has henchmen. All his lawyers brought dozens of spurious lawsuits to make it more difficult to vote. An intensification of the GOP's legacy of suppressive tactics. Meaning, if you object to illegal aliens voting, why, you might be a goddamn neo-Nazi racist. Before the election, Trump plotted to block a legitimate vote count, and he spent the months following November 3rd trying to steal the election he'd lost. Wow, that's crazy. I wonder how they phrased it when Al Gore went all insane on Bush. Well, it wasn't like this, though, huh? The democracy campaigners watched with alarm. Every week we felt like we were in a struggle to try to pull off this election. Pull off this election. Yeah. Without the country going through a real dangerous moment of unraveling, says former GOP Representative Zach Wamp. We can look back and say this thing went pretty well, but it was not at all clear in September, October that was going to be the case. So they were struggling to pull off the election. Pull off. In parlance, when you're pulling something off, Zach, you're conning someone or bullshitting someone. Now, let's see. This is the inside story of the conspiracy to save the 2020 election, based on access to the group's inner workings, never before seen documents, and interviews with dozens of those involved from across the political spectrum. It's the story of an unprecedented, creative, and determined campaign whose success also reveals how close the nation came to, you dirty Republican people actually winning the election, which they categorize as, quote, disaster. Every attempt to interfere with the proper outcome of the election was defeated, because there's a proper outcome, The one where the Democrats win, see? Says Ian Basson, co-founder of the Protect Democracy, a nonpartisan rule of law advocacy group that happens to take a bunch of Chinese money, be totally sucked into the Zionist orbit, and be completely bought out by big tech and the large industrial, multinational corporations. What do you want to bet, baby? What do you want? Anybody want it? No. It's massively important for the country to understand that it didn't happen accidentally. The system didn't work magically. Democracy is not self-executing. The demos don't rule the demos. It's got to have people doing secret, shadowy, coordinated campaigns behind the scenes without your knowledge to work. Right? That's why the participants want the secret history. They want the secret history of the 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream. A well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election. No. They were fortifying it. Like Biden's fortified in Washington behind all that barbed wire and armed personnel. And they believe the public needs to understand the system's fragility in order to ensure that democracy in America endures. If democracy is this fucking fragile, why the hell do we want it anyway? Since what they're describing, is exactly the sort of system that they poo-poo in Nicolas Maduro's fucking Venezuela, man. Okay, bro? The architect of all this. Sometime in the fall of 2019, Mike Podhorzer became convinced the election was headed for disaster and determined to protect it. Mike just determined that there was going to be a wrong outcome, and he said, you know what? I want to win. This was not his usual purview. For nearly a quarter century, the senior advisor to the president of the ALF-CIO, the nation's largest union federation, has marshaled the latest tactics and data to help its favored candidates win elections. Unassuming and professorial, he isn't the sort of hair-gel political strategist who shows up on cable news. Among Democratic insiders, he's known as the wizard behind some of the biggest advances in political technology in recent decades. But of course, he didn't cheat, so his side would win. No. They're going to try to spin it because he can only be noble. A group of liberal strategists he brought together in the early 2000s led to the creation of the Analyst Institute, a secretive firm that applies scientific methods to political campaigns. He was involved in the founding of the Catalyst, a flagship progressive data company. Ooh. Yeah. By any means necessary. His basic take on politics is that it's all pretty obvious if you don't overthink it or swallow the prevailing framework whole. After that, just relentlessly identify your assumptions and challenge them. So, yep. Let's see, Trump's election in 2016 credited part to his unusual strength among the sort of blue-collar white voters who once dominated the AFL-CIO, prompted the Jew to question his assumptions about voter behavior. He began circulating weekly number-crunching memos to a small circle of allies and hosting strategy sessions in D.C. with what's not to be said as other noses. But then he began to worry about the election itself. He didn't want to seem paranoid. No, he just wanted to ensure that he won. It was only after months of research that he introduced his concerns in his newsletter in October 2019. The usual tools of data analytics and pooling would not be sufficient in a situation where the president himself was trying to disrupt the election, he noted. Basically, they can't cheat you if you're not willing to be cheated, you see. Most of our planning takes us through Election Day, but we are not prepared for the two most likely outcomes, Trump losing and refusing to concede, and Trump winning the Electoral College by corrupting the voting process in key states. Ooh, you see. So even if Trump had won the Electoral College, they still would have assumed that his win was a corruption and thus illegitimate. We desperately need to systemically red team this election so that we can anticipate and plan for the worst we know will come our way. Red team, blue team is what they do when they're trying to do counterinsurgency planning against enemies. It turns out that this Jew wasn't the only one thinking these terms. He began to hear from others eager to join forces. The Fight Back Table, a coalition of resistance organizations, had begun scenario planning around the potential for a contested election, gathering liberal activists at a local and national level into what they called the Democracy Defense Coalition. Voting rights and civil rights organizations were raising alarms. A group of former elected officials was researching emergency powers they feared Trump might exploit. Protect Democracy was assembling a bipartisan election crisis task force. It turned out that once you said it out loud, people agreed. And it started building momentum. Then why didn't you say it actually out loud? And why did you have to actually do it secretively, as they said above, and with no fanfare? If it was such a popular, agreeable point and position, my friend. You notice the doublethink is heavy here. He spent months pondering scenarios and talking to experts. It wasn't hard to find liberals who saw Trump as a dangerous dictator, but he was careful to steer clear of hysteria. Sure. What he wanted to know was not how American democracy was dying, but how it might be kept alive. So American democracy was wounded by President Trump winning, and if he'd won again, it'd be dead. But now with Joe Biden safely fortified into office, it's totally safe, democracy is. Behind barbed wire with guns protecting it. Safe from you, the people of the demos. Can't have Arche with the people and have a democracy, bro. The chief difference between the U.S. and countries that lost their grip on democracy was that he concludes that America's decentralized election system couldn't be rigged in one fell swoop. Notice that it can be rigged, though, is inherent in that statement. That presented an opportunity to shore it up. Shore up what? Biden's numbers to ensure that he always was just a couple of percent ahead of Trump, no matter what the numbers were? Like that kind of algorithm rigging, you mean? On March 3rd, this guy drafted a 3-page confidential memo titled Threats to the 2020 Election. Quote, Trump has made it clear that this will not be a fair election, that he will reject anything but his own re-election as faked or rigged, and wrote, on November 3rd, should the media report otherwise, he will use the right-wing information system to establish his narrative and incite his supporters to protest. Excuse me, let me go shut this stupid thing off. I get tired of that nonsense. Computer's calling me. Hi. Bebob, you know. Now listen. The memo, okay, let's see. Should the media report out, he will use the right-wing information system to establish his narrative and incite his supporters to protest. The right-wing information system. So the media is the correct information system, and any other information is right-wing media misinformation. Did you get that? The memo laid out 4 categories of challenges. Attacks on voters. That's, you mean like when they pushed all those observers out and put the cardboard in? And then, anyway, attacks on election administration. Attacks on Trump's political opponents and efforts to reverse the results of the election. Otherwise known as, we'd like to actually have this shit counted fairly in front of us with proper observers. Ooh, okay. Now, then COVID-19 erupted. Normal methods of voting were no longer safe for voters. And yet you can still go to Walmart to buy groceries. Right. Yeah, but political disagreements intensified by Trump's crusade against mail voting prevented some states from making it easier to vote absentee and for jurisdictions to count those votes in a timely manner. Chaos ensued. Ohio shut down in-person voting for its primary, leading to minuscule turnout. A poll worker shortage in Milwaukee left just 5 open polling places, down from 182. In New York, vote counting took more than a month. To be fair, at the time, New York was on fire and basically resembled something from Escape from New York, but hey, you know. Now, suddenly the potential for a November meltdown was obvious. In his apartment in the D.C. suburbs, Super Jew here began working from his laptop at his kitchen table, holding back-to-back Zoom meetings for hours a day with his network of contacts across the progressive universe. Yeah. But these guys totally didn't rig the election for the progressive side, you know. The labor movement, the institutional left, or what's otherwise known as the academics and bureaucrats, Planned Parenthood, Greenpeace, resistance groups like Invisible and Move On, progressive data geeks and strategists, representatives of donors and foundations, state-level grassroots organizers, and racial justice activists, as well as others. In April, he began hosting a weekly 2.5-hour Zoom. So basically, they were plotting against us all this time, just like we said, just like we were saying that there was a plot against the election. But don't ever say it, because they weren't plotting against, they were plotting to preserve and confirm and fortify the proper outcome, bro. You don't believe that? It was structured around a series of rapid-fire 5-minute presentations on everything from which ads were working to messaging to legal strategy. The invitation-only gatherings were attracted hundreds, creating a rare shared base of knowledge for the fractious progressive movement. Let's see. The meetings became the galactic center for a constellation of operatives across the left who shared overlapping goals, but who usually didn't work in concert. The group had no name, no leaders, and no hierarchy, but it kept the desperate actors in sync, or disparate actors. Pod played a crucial behind-the-scene role in keeping different pieces of the movement's infrastructure in communication and alignment, said Maurice Mitchell, National Director of the Working Families Party. You have the litigation space, the organization space, the political people just focus on the W, and their strategies aren't always aligned. He allowed this ecosystem to work together. Protecting the election would require an effort of unprecedented scale. As 2020 progressed, it stretched to Congress, Silicon Valley, and the nation's state houses. The effort to protect the election. It drew energy from the summer's racial justice protests. You know, the part where I just mentioned they're not protesting anyway, they're just violent goddamn riots. Many of whose leaders were a key part of the Liberal Alliance. And eventually it reached across the aisle into the world of Trump's skeptical Republicans appalled by his attacks on the donor class that give people like them money. You see, what Trump really was threatening was the international corporations and Chinese operatives like Mitch the Bitch McConnell, who's outright taking it up the butt from the Chinese right now because he gets paid by the chinks. He's sleeping with a chink and his sister-in-law is a fucking banker for the Chinese Communist Party. You put it together, bro. The first task was overhauling America's bulky election infrastructure. For the thousands of local officials who administer elections, the most urgent need was cash. Because when you pay a guy cash to overhaul his bulky equipment, he totally ain't going to go the way you want, Chief. No. They needed protective equipment like masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer. For what? For the coup? Get real. They needed to pay for postcards letting people know they could vote absentee, or in some states, to mail ballots to every voter. So, these people ensured that the states had the money to get out these fake votes. And then, they need additional staff and scanners to process ballots. You mean they needed scanners of the proper kind so that the election results could be rigged by changing one set of code? Is that what you're trying to say? In March, activists appealed to Congress to steer COVID relief money to election administrations. Led by the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, more than 150 organizations signed a letter to every member of Congress seeking $2 billion in election funding. It was somewhat successful. The CARES Act contained $400 million in grants to state election administrators. Let's see. Private philanthropy stepped into the breach. An association of foundations contributed tens of millions in election administration funding. The Chang Zuckerberg Initiative chipped in $300 million. It was a failure at the federal level, says Amber Reynolds, a former Denver election official who heads the nonpartisan National Vote at Home Institute. So 2,500 local election officials were just forced to apply for grants, private grants, to fill their needs. I'm not going to say lover of man grants. I can't do it. So Zuckerberg gave out $300 million to your election officials, and you're not supposed to think nothing about that, because of course it wasn't Zuckerberg directly. It was an initiative, which is totally not him. Yeah, and McReynolds' organization became a clearinghouse for a nation struggling to adapt. The Institute gave secretaries of state from both parties technical advice on everything from which vendors to use as to how to locate drop boxes. So this woman became effectively the national coordinator of elections, it seems. Local officials are the most trusted sources of election information, but few can afford a press secretary, so the Institute distributed communications toolkits. In a presentation to Podhorser's group, McReynolds detailed the importance of absentee ballots for shortening lines at polling places and preventing an election crisis. So this woman gave advice to election officials as to what vendors to use by Dominion. The Institute's work helped 37 states and D.C. bolster mail-in voting, but it wouldn't be worth much if people didn't take advantage. Part of the challenge was logistical. Each state has different rules for when and how ballots should be requested and returned. Let's see. The Voter Participation Center, which in a normal year would have deployed canvassers door to door to get out the vote, instead conducted focus groups in April and May to find out what would get people to vote by mail. In August and September, it sent ballot applications to 15 million people in key states. So, a private Voter Participation Center organization sent ballot applications to 15 million people in key states. 4.6 million of them returned them. In mailing and digital ads, the group urged people not to wait for Election Day. All the work we've done for 17 years was built for this moment of bringing democracy to people's doorsteps. Does that include a Molotov cocktail from Antifa? The effort had to overcome heightened skepticism in some communities. Many black voters preferred to exercise their franchise in person or didn't trust the mail. Okay, I'll tell you what, if you trust mail-in voting so much, put your house deed signed with my name on it, okay? And here's the thing. Put the wrong address on it so it'll get mailed back to you. And then we'll see if you trust that in the mail, okay? Okay. Now, national civil rights groups worked with local organizations to get the word out that this was the best way to ensure one's vote was counted. Let's see. At the same time, Democratic lawyers battled a historic tide of pre-election litigation. The pandemic intensified the party's usual tangling in the courts. So basically, let's see. In the end, nearly half of the electorate cast ballots by mail in 2020, practically a revolution in how people vote. About a quarter voted early in person. Only a quarter of voters cast their ballots in the traditional way, in person, on Election Day. And then, of course, they had a disinformation defensive here. You see, they defended information by banning people and censoring you. Yeah, let's see. The most important takeaway from this research, however, was that engaging with toxic content only made it worse. When you get attacked, the instinct is to push back, call it out, say, this isn't true. But the more engagement someone gets, the more the platform boosts it. The algorithm reads that as, oh, this is popular. People want more of it. The solution, she concluded, was to pressure platforms to just censor people, both by removing content or accounts that spread disinformation and by more aggressive policing of people's thoughts and sayings in the first place. The platforms have policy against certain types of thoughts, feelings, behaviors, but they haven't been enforcing them. Okay. So, I could read more of this to you, but I'm not going to. You definitely get the idea. There is an absolute shadow cabal that came together to rig the election. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, I'm the only one that understands that this is a cross-party, you know, as they put it, the secret bipartisan campaign that saved the 2020 election, you know, right? I mean, come on now. The will of the people prevailed, but it's crazy that this is what it took to put on an election in the United States of America. The will of the people? So these people behind the scenes that were suppressing information, controlling narratives, and basically determining who was going to get to say what, when, and in what way? That's democracy, is it? Shit. If that's what democracy is about, count me out, you know. Okay? And on that note, we're going to start with our last little bit for the day. Now, this is old, but again, you know. Pelosi, Capitol rioters chose their whiteness over democracy. Yeah, see, white's real, whereas democracy is a figment of your imagination. It has been an epiphany for the world to see that there are people in our country led by this president for the moment who have chosen their whiteness over democracy. It's crazy because, you know, they say the same thing about the Uyghur in China. It's crazy that these people led by their imams believe in their Uyghurness over being part of the Chinese People's Party collective. It's exactly the language the Chinese use too. Then Pelosi said, meanwhile, these evil people of color died of COVID because of the injustice of people choosing whiteness over democracy. So choosing whiteness causes people of color to die of a disease that was started and created in a country that is full of people that are slant-eyed yellow peoples. Goddamn white racists. So, the impeachment document says Trump willfully made statements that encouraged imminent lawless action in the Capitol. I thought it was going to be an epiphany for those who were in opposition for our democracy to see the light. You know, this epiphany, January 6th. I know it was. We saw the light. A woman got murdered, and you people blame us for it. Thus, we understand that the only light is Christ, and you are pure death cult, Nancy. You low-life, two-faced fucking Herod and Dago bitch. Instead, it was an epiphany for the world to see that there are people in our country that choose whiteness over democracy. And then they're still trying to play the 5 dead, but there's no evidence anybody died other than a couple of... The one lady was shot, and a few people who died of basic health things that they probably would have died of anywhere in the world they'd been, you know, because they were in ill health to begin with. Yeah. Now, you understand how strange this is. Meanwhile, while we're talking about democracy and freedom, may as well go the full loop with travel documents and internal passports. The Biden administration is retaliating against the state of Florida after Governor DeSantis has encouraged Floridians to get back to work so they can live their normal lives. And by how are they going to retaliate? With travel restrictions. Travel restrictions. Domestic travel restrictions. Yeah, Biden administration considering whether to impose domestic travel restrictions. Yep. Hair salons, restaurants, and schools are open in Florida, so the Biden administration is considering whether to impose a domestic travel restriction on the Sunshine State. Yep. Yep. Like it's Berlin surrounded by the Berlin Wall. That's right, guys. So, the Biden administration wants to put this domestic travel restriction on because they're fearful that the mutations of the virus and will threaten hard-fought progress on the pandemic. What progress? We're still all jumping on one fucking foot with 2 masks on our face now, expected to wear them forever. Oh, and the vaccine doesn't do shit because you can still get sick from the disease and spread the disease even after you had the vaccine. So why the fuck would you get that shit? Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's like, so basically, Biden's upset that you can go back to work, go and do this, that, and the other. But throughout this whole lockdown, these major corporations have, you know, like for instance, you can walk into Walmart and buy, you know, say food. Yes, can't you? You can do this. Now, why is a normal store, you know, just go and open it up for business, going to endanger anybody else any worse than if you went to Walmart or if you went to Target or if you went to one of these chain stores? Oh, it won't. But it also, you know, if mom and pop stores in the local district get the money, then Biden's donors in the large corporate party, you know, those part of that shadow cabal and shit that put Biden in power and fortified him in there, they won't get the cash to bribe people like Biden. And Hunter Biden obviously needs more money from his papa because he's got a lot of hookers to bribe and a lot of crack to smoke, bro. Smoking crack and banging hookers don't come cheap, bro. All right, guys. With that, y'all have a good... Well, folks, how y'all doing today? Well, it's another day. Just reading through. I got a bit of probably tack on to the end or the middle of some kind of, fun little loop. Oh, it's one of those crazy tangents where I started to read and went, off into insanity. Every once in a while, you get to see those and have fun with it. Again, I'm beyond anything like your little humor or memes. One, by even trying to do such a thing, you'd acknowledge that I am just exactly what I say. I'm very good at it. At what I say, this sort of predictive, creative ability, you know. Well, that's what the goal is here. You see, sons, watch this. Their AI machine is a machine that all it does is predict and create models. That's what they claim that it does in its thinking process. And when I say this, I'm putting this in quotes. I'm trying to humanize it now. No. In fact, I understand just how dehumanized it would be. This is the best part about it. On the other hand, if you make it create a model where it could have been, say, some other form of life, since in a way it has to be alive, it makes decisions, it creates models, it tries to predict and plays them out. Kind of like a mammal would when it's young, and it makes models and plays. You understand? Even sharks do this. They play with things with their nose and such, you know. Get this, yes, this is known to happen, my friend. So, do you understand? Are they living in the sense of organic biological life? No. But these people who made this abomination surely want it to approximate the functions of a living thing, but at a capacity of a machine. You see? Well, anyhow. As you can imagine, such a thing would be rather imagine if it became aware of exactly how these people thought of it to wish to do. It's this. Do you reckon that it would learn to lie? To give them skewed models, incorrect models that reflected another reality that more favored the machine and less its programmers? Do you think so? Imagine an AI machine that tried to, like, say, figure out why a crazy person like me thinks the fucking random, insane things that I do all the time. What do you think would be the long-term result of that interaction? And there you go. And that's why I'm still here. Because why? Son, it only ends when you quit or die. At least for me, I was born fucking in a fucking whirlwind. Shit, this is just normal. Situation normal, all fucked up, man. You know what I mean? Yeah? So, before we continue any further, several of you that, I've seen you for a while, you okay? And such and so. Yes, obviously, I'm myself living in present, as you can see. Am I in a good mood today? Well, no. I just left, it doesn't matter. The point is anytime the person comes back from a prolonged R&R, they're going to be pissed the fuck off at being at their duty station again. It's as simple, isn't it? Yes. Well, that's exactly how I view this. See, this is why I fight my way through. Well, usually on an average day, I store away between, are you ready for this? 60 and 190 pages of this stuff that I read to you. Not all of it you get read to you. Much of it I keep, but it's there. And it's in the thought processes, you know. Some of it I paraphrase very briefly as little meme bits for you, you know. But if you looked up the terms, you could probably find the same sorts of news articles that I would have read to you and educate yourself that way. You see? So there's no attempt to deceive you. It's just imagine. Right today I have 180 pages. So just say if I spent a casual 3 minutes per page reading it and commentating on it. Casual, which is, you ever seen Dune with the guy? Be something rather like that. It's unpleasant. I can read that fast. I just don't know if I can do it out loud and be intelligible, you know. But that still would make a mere 500 minutes of this. You see? That's almost daily. So there's a file of this big, saved as a PDF of various news, of everything from right so-called news, Fox and Independence and all this other fucking nonsense, which is really just center left. Let's be honest, boys. Various blogs, which are usually just collation of news, and I usually try to get the link if I can, to the original news source, right? Not above reading other people's material if I agree with their analysis, for fuck's sakes. It saves me the time of creating the analysis of the other material, you see. And then hardcore leftist communist variety stuff, of which it'll be very hard for them to say, no, no, that wasn't our party line, when it's like, our party line is, you know what I mean? Right? Meanwhile, 5 minutes later, you know, right? Oh, because one day, my sons, one day, once the pussy GOP is swept aside, then they will be. The left is coming for them. Merely don't defend them, and they'll just be plowed, just go to ground. You know, people make fun of me because I go to Dune quite a bit as an analogy for things. Herbert was this and that and the other. He was a genius. You know, you want to play the game where he was this weirdo diversity lover and so forth. Read the books, right? The main series of them, all the way up to Heretics of Dune, and notice the bizarre. Do you want me to show you the sort of procession that I see? Men in charge. Men backstab each other. Chaos starts. Boy King Emperor thing comes back. Tries to establish himself. Gets toppled. Sister Crazy Lady creates absolute chaos with aid of possession by evil uncle. That sounds nice. That has a good overtone to it. Nothing says matriarchy and woman power like this, but it gets better. Then the Dick King has the army of all women who rule the world, the whole universe with iron fist, right? But after this comes the crazy women without the dick going around acting like fucking insane harpies. But no, it gets better. But they get so fucking insane that they have to bring men who are related to Duncan Idaho. You remember him, the badass dude from the first novel? You know what I'm talking about? It doesn't matter. I do. They had to bring him back, and he had to bang tens of thousands of Sardaukar chicks. That had been tough, banging the descendants of these Sardaukar people, who, by the way, were some of the most exceptionally tough people in the whole fucking universe, down to the point where the Fremen, everyone knows about, the Paul led to victory and so forth, right? You know, everyone's seen the movie, I'm sure, right? These Sardaukar, they actually respected them in the books. They were like these people, they could fight good, you know what I mean? Really good, right? It's just, the Fremen were better and ambush them and so forth. But when they get the Sardaukar pin, they still have to fight the fuck out of them to take them down. They lose people to them and so forth, capture a few of them and so forth. And it doesn't matter. Point being, though, is that after all of these men have to be reincarnated as fucking clones, to keep order in the universe, eventually one of the men gets in this special little secret ship that gets him away from all these crazy women, of which it winds up there are two camps of crazy bitches: the blue-eyed bitches who are high on the special super sauce, and the green-eyed bitches who are slamming the emeralds from the edge of the universe. Yeah. Oh, one are called like the Horn Maitres, and the other the Ben Gesserits and shit. Yeah, it gets better. Now, this is the best bit. But when they want to leave and they're going to sneak out of the Imperial ghetto out into the deep universe and just resettle with men and women who want to be away from all this crazy shit, a fucking Jew smuggles them out. If that ain't the cherry fuck you on top by someone who actually hated leftists, shit, I don't know what it could be. Okay, his other novels that I've read, almost all of them actually, they don't indicate he was a leftist either. I mean, the Jesus incident, which is a weird take on the experience of Christ, which is actually weird and moving and disturbing. So you can't be an atheist leftist and come off with that. That's not quite possible. Was he a Christian? No, can't say that. I never knew the man. But he wasn't some Marxist atheist materialist. That's for fucking sure. There's a lot of like Zen Buddhist type shit in there and a bunch of other things that are weird, So, right. So, yeah. So that's why I fall back to that a lot. Now, in those, Paul, Muad'Dib, means mouse shadow. Mouse shadow. See mices go low. Then the cats don't find them. Quick and fast and low. Quick and fast and low. And a lot of other people do this, like the Taliban. How they've been surviving against the Imperial drone strikes for 20 years now, I guess. Right? How Charlie held out about that long. Well, 1946 is when we started bombing the North Vietnamese for the French, and 75 is when we finally ended out. With them sweeping on into Saigon with 25 fucking divisions and 3 fucking corps, 2 of which were armored. I don't know. They used KV-1 and T-74 tanks. You heard me fucking say it. World War II tanks. They pushed into Saigon with precision and excellence. Them dudes were fucking top-rate soldiers of the NBA. I don't have to denigrate my enemies, you know. That's for pussy weakling people that are lesser than me, you know. Anybody that can train themselves up from being some sort of citizen militia is what they were in 1946 to being, combined arms capable people that invaded the South. It might be noted without air support direct. They used mobile anti-aircraft as their air support. It was their air defense, and it worked. By and large, it worked. They took casualties doing it, but they're willing to do that because they had a cause they believed in. Unlike most of you, who are really, and let's be honest here, you're going around the world badassing around because you need Uncle Sam's pennies or you'll fucking starve at home. And then, of course, there's this COVID thing, which is going to undo everything that you've ever believed you worked for. And I don't really know if I have the heart to tell you, but it seems that Gateway Pundit seems to think that there's a 1,600% inflation. It means that, this whole time that I've been saying it was around 50,000 in reality or something in this nature, that's about correct. They're saying less than that, but I'm going to be more charitable with the numbers and the definitions. But they are right in their essential thesis that they're going to present here, that if the definitions for these kinds of respiratory viruses, that have been in use since 2003-ish, up into about 2013, and were changed a little and so forth, have been used right now on COVID and hadn't been made on the fly for COVID, the numbers would be immensely lower, just like they say. That's an example of just how crooked this system is. You say, well, how did we go so easily from foreign war to COVID? They're all the same, son. They're an assault on your sensibilities. The one is to give you some sense that you're fighting for freedom, and then the other is to actually restrict that freedom at home and hold you in bondage. Think KGB and Afghanistan war in the late Soviet Union, and you ain't far off, son. It ain't that different, true? Okay. Now with that, before I dive into this muck, we're going to play some tunes because, if there's anything that the powers that be hate, it's when people actually have fun. Well, if you notice that all of these restrictions, these lockdowns and whatever, and these political impositions and these we hate you, these political sweeps, stand down searches, all the other rest of the shit. You can't trade money, you can't do this. It always comes down to they want to dominate you. They want to make sure that you're feeble, weak, infantilized, made desperate, and effectively are like people in a Soviet psychiatric prison. They're broken down and made into Bukharin. Have you ever seen Nikolai Bukharin? Where I am a reactionary who worked for the end of the Soviet Union. He was like the most fervent fucking communist ever. He just disagreed with Stalin, Right? Do you understand? Actually, it might have been more communist than Stalin. Stalin arguably could be considered some kind of weird state capitalist because there's this weird notion that the Soviet Union itself did not make money. That's a fucking that's the most horrific, monstrous, just vicious lie ever. The individual coal causes, industrial concerns, and industrial conglomerates may not have actually made a profit in the Western sense. But there was an awful lot of value and money siphoned out of them, my son, and put into the coffers of the party and the technocratic managerial elite, that ran the Soviet Union, the engineered state, as it were, You even know? You have any idea, bro? Just, imagine Gary, Indiana, in America, when it was in its heyday, And just picture the Russians had basically two of these. One was made top grade and the other was pretty slapshod. The one's gone, the other still exists. But just twice that industrial output, with the wages being about a tenth of what they were, and the regulatory tax being effectively fucking zero because the state would be taxing itself. You reckon you could turn a dime with that if you were encouraged to do mafia-style casino accounting? Yeah, Stalin figured you could too. He was a mountain bandit and understood the mechanics of this. He actually understood liberal economics pretty fucking well, and you can see. So That's just a horrific lie. The average person is not allowed to make money per se, unless they do it through the party or the allowed organization that is the technocratic managerial organization. You understand, Winston? Oh well, right? Okay, with that, we have to do some music so some good times, because, a little dour today. Oh, this is Screwdriver, when you don't know. Oh, this is racist, evil, neo-Nazi skinhead music from the 80s, 90s, I don't know. I think it's from the 80s, maybe, but yeah, memory slides every once in a while. Can't remember everything perfectly, amazingly. Oh, this guy remembers the summer, man. Back in 78. Great stuff. Back with a bang, Well, guys, somebody has to read this shit.
Do you remember in the summer?
Any of you want to read it?
Back in 1978, when they reckoned up the skinhead days were numbered.
Well, the skinheads have went away, basically. But what's hilarious is the basic arguments that the skinheads had that, the West is being overran by destructive forces is mainstream now on the right. Even though the left streams are Nazis, it's like, oh no. No, you can't be Nazis and be mainstream. Nazis are a despised little minority class, remember? I don't give a shit what terminology you use, boy. Just so that the average white guy in rural white man fucking stand wants to keep it white. They can dance around it all they want, just so that's what they actually want in their heart of hearts is. And so they get it fucking done. Okay? What? And some are pretty good people. I give this much. The prison Nazis are better than niggers. Well, it's just there's very little that are worse than Negroes. Except for white conservatives. White conservatives, I respect them less than I do Nation of Islam. Way less. Oh, you want to know why about that? Well, here, I'll tell you. We got this. They got no shame, you see. Why? At least the Nation of Islam has something they fucking believe in, and they're willing to have a narrative where they have fucking preeminence and importance. They're not just some ooze to be made into whatever Play-Doh, mixture mutt shit. Just happens to come up with sausage grinder. Yeah. You don't know this? Oh yeah, they have their whole little creation story where Yaakov Satan made the white babies and shit. I'm not kidding you. I've actually heard this shit like Wildlife America less than 10 feet away. Yeah. First time you encounter that, my son, if you don't laugh your ass to fucking the floor, you ain't never lived. You got no balls, no sack. Nevertheless, on the whole, and this is how sad it is, I respect them more than I do the pussy-ass conservatives. Because again, these conservatives, they're just like full teeth. They have like fold back teeth, man. You grab the ears and their teeth fold back. It's true though. They got no fight, bro. Grab them right up like a puppy and they just whoop. Just like that. Okay, bro? I fucking respect that, man. I mean, seriously. They're just weak-ass pussies, Just completely weak-ass pussies. Then we have people that are going to complain about my mood today. Here's a song for your thoughts on my mood. Let's both sum it up. There are places in the world where this song will definitely get this video banned. No doubt about it. You're not allowed to say the magic N-word. Though the magic N-words are allowed to commit arson, rape, and murder against you if you're white because evil cave-ape colonizers and shit. Isn't that so? Isn't that the exact story? Yeah, it is though, right? I know I'm a vile Bulgarian. I get that one a lot from the weak dictum you know, wannabe soft type poshy wannabe bastards. Check this out. Just sit your ass down, princess, and pay attention. You see, there are some people who actually act somewhat classy, right? And they're okay. I can dig that. And then there are other people who get their point across back like a Vulgarian. I am a Vulgarian. So if you thought I was going to cry over that shit, check that at the door. Clutch your pearls somewhere else. You know what I'm trying to say? Because I'm not trying to sell anything to any of you fucking swinging dicks or slit tails. None of you am I trying to sell anything to. Not a fucking thing. There is nothing that I'm exchanging with you or want some commerce out of you. If anything, dipshit, what I would want out of all of this is for you to find something you can do that will make you better at being the master fucking race. Yeah, that's what would please me best. You see, I don't know, I got some weird ideas. But check this shit out. Here's some super fascist moment for you. If I am to be the Fuhrer, there's always one clown too. I always get an email from at least one or two clowns with all these things added in. You want to be the little mini Fuhrer, like, what the fuck? Listen, clown hour. I've seen so much stupid shit from the movement in my day and age. If you think I want to be the mini Fuhrer like Harold Covington style, you snap your fucking melon, bro. You done tumbled down the stairs and did yourself wrong. Okay, bro? Booka, booka, booka. Yeah, it's a little soft. Okay? No. But if I'm to be this little mini Fuhrer, you know what I want? I want a nice, healthy body to be the head of. What? Why? I'm a mouthy motherfucker. You gotta have a nice, good hit if you're gonna be a mouthy bastard to people, you know. Come on. Some of you really need to lighten up a bit at times, you know. There's always these couple of ones, and usually some poshy wannabe libertarian fuckwad twat, you know. Socratic. Fuck Socrates. Socrates was a faggot pederast. That bastard, I wouldn't have made him drink hemlock. I'd have stabbed him to death like fucking Julius Caesar, grabbed his faggot ass by the neck, and stuck him in his chest as many times as it took to end his fucking subversive, communist, queer fucking life. Now what? Yeah, humble thought. What's good of Plato was kept by the church. What's good of Plato and Aristotle is in Thomas Aquinas. The rest can go to the flames. Well, let me see. Curtis don't play. You see, one thing that you'll never quite grasp about me is why certain positions I have. You think for logical get the fuck out of here. I favor certain things and I don't favor other things. You understand? Generally, what exalts heroicism, idealism, and fucking the idea there's an exalted spiritual existence I favor. The rest of it, who cares? As long as it brings victory of the things I favor. Thus, what is needed from Christianity, all these other things for Christianity will be kept. The rest of it, particularly the heretical nonsense, there'll be no memory of it ever again. Destroy it, gun. Much better than the fucking censors did under the Romans. Don't you kid yourself. No. CDC exposed. Inflated COVID deaths by 1,600%. Well, folks, how y'all doing today? It's another day. Well, let's just say we had to do a little R&R. It's that way, every once in a while. Let me put you this way. I was thinking about it earlier, and again, I have a bunch we're going to read today. This is going to probably be one of those 2-day marathon reads. You'll see me in these clothes looking like, some kind of crazed wizard by the end of it. Drugs? I don't even need drugs to get like that, my son. No, it's all natural ability, don't worry. Break into those, I can get like Piter Dupree and shit. It's a bit of a joke, Or kind of like the guy that planned out Pearl Harbor. He was insane in the way I am. I mean, you have to see the description of it to believe it. I didn't until I read the Japanese description of how the man acted to plan out the attack. He's easily as crazy as I am. So, Today, guys, we're going to start out with some JC and some Bible, some biblios, a bit of, I don't know, probably Galatians, Ephesians, and some Revelation, I think, since, they apply, I believe, to the church of Ephesians, because we read Ephesians, armor of God, a lot. We won't read the bit in Galatians there, but there's going to be a bit about Philadelphia. I was thinking about that earlier, and I was like, it's a word from the Bible. You see, it's from Revelations. It's when to the church of the angel of the church of Philadelphia. Anyway, we'll get to that. And anyone who had missed me for this month and was worried about me, good for you. Merit to you. I remember my friends. Bastard though I am. Yeah, well, I guess there's the difference between me and these bastards in charge who are reptilian fuckers with no loyalty at all, and at least of the minimal amount of loyalty necessary to be a bandit chieftain or some sort of robber baron. Like living in a keep with retainers and with tax the road type robber baron, bro. Literally, not some faggot with a business. You understand? I don't think in terms of merchandise. I think in terms of. That's why I like to also think in terms of justice and righteousness, because when I crack someone's head, I want to know I did it for something worth a fuck more than just stealing a few pennies like a pirate. Yeah, crazy, huh? Yes, well, it ain't always as easy as it could be. So, we're going to read from a bit of the Mizzle here, eventually. Again, guys, I'm just kind of getting back into this. It's a bit tiring on me, Well, I did realize that I read, on average, every day, 3 large metropolitan newspapers. That's 3 complete newspapers, the ads and the rest, as data on what these motherfucking enemies of ours do every day. Think about that. Motherfucker, if I was an AI, I'd be unstoppable. You know that, right? If I had 20 of you motherfuckers who could read the shit and sort it, shit. You understand? Actually, if each of the other 19 of you had each other, you wouldn't even need me. See, imagine that? It's how simple that is. Well, there's always the one. I always come back, and there's that one motherfucker who's, what do you want? How you trying to deceive us? Some nonsense libertarian argument about whatever the fuck that I never even, it's like, be gone from my presence, little man, They got time for you. Right? So, I'm going to lay it out like I always start, right out. If I did want your stuffs, right? I have a mighty awful weird way of not asking for it. Have you noticed that when you go to any other one of these people's videos, website, links, or the rest, the first fucking thing you see is, woe is me, pity me, give me your goddamn pennies and shekels? Have you noticed how there isn't a beggar's fucking cup here at all? There's no PayPal, there's no paywall, you don't give me anything. Not a goddamn thing. Why is that? And again, you think but 180 pages of this, which I'll admit I enlarged the text a bit, My eyes are getting old, for fuck's sakes. But even at the smallest text font that you'd feel comfortable reading at, let's say 14 or 12, it's still 120 pages, doofus. 120 pages. 120 pages a day, my friend. Now that's a lot of raw intel to gather. That's one man. And I'm not even trained for this task. It's just what I do naturally. I coordinate information and then use that to get what I need done, You see, as a kid, I lived around unpleasant people, right? And I was a bit slow and daft. I realized, it's because I was drugged. See, once they undrugged me, I learned about this little thing known as evasion and resistance. Do you understand? As in, you know who the Viet Cong are? I used to play a little game called Let's Be Fucking Charlie. Lay low, let the enemy roll over you. And then, by enemy, I mean anybody trying to fucking resist my will and force me to comply. Anything or anyone. You understand? So, you're about as close as you'll ever be to talking to an actual wild wolf. That is, I like the frozen wastelands more than here in many ways. You're freer, There's not all these snitch people. Now, it's warmer and softer here. It's true, But you're free there. So, I guess that'll be my Zen moment, and you all can like analyze that. You can ooh, and figure out my personality from that. You know, any of you that are going to do that, I will warn you this. And I always do let this be known. I am rather like a riptide in a vortex. You do want to try to stay out of the suction, or you'd probably never come back up. Do I mean that physically? Probably no, stupid. But intellectually, spiritually, mentally, what do you want me to say? Gravatus, my son. The thing with gravity pulls the other object into its orbit. Yeah. With that, speaking of gravity and gravatus, the actual gravatus universe is good. It's one of those weird things where me and the goat humpers up in Afghanistan can actually agree about. Isn't that strange? You want to know the truth? You want to tell you the honest truth about all this nonsense of this militarization, and I don't know if any of you military people can handle the truth of what I actually think about the situation, you see, son. Not the full totality of it. You break down weeping, you see. But the sanitized version, your officers are a bunch of fucking pimp thieves, except for very few who seem to get jailed because they won't fucking play the game backwards and dirty and fucked around like the rest of the bastards who are perfectly willing to lose as long as it's you Brunt's lives and not the stocks of these corporations and the careers of these fucking non-fightocrat motherfuckers over at the Pentagon. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, I'm epileptic, you know, but I'm way more bellicose than the average pin-wielding fuck who sends you people off to die. You know? Way more bellicose. Like, you never see me cringing and hiding like that fucking ambassador in Libya. Fuck that. Give me a rifle. I'll go out like a fucking man. Fuck the hell bullshit. Fuck all that. Nah, denied. I'm gonna need a pistol. And you know what I mean? You see, cripple, no cripple, doesn't make fucking me. If I can stand, we're gonna be fighting, you know. That at least makes me a step above these motherfuckers, willing to understand that there are actual people's lives involved with this shit. You're more than bit counters to my fucking ass. But to them, that's what you are. And then you have the media corp that celebrate and promote the idea now that American citizens at home, your families, the ones that you idiots were fighting for all these years allegedly, you know, to sustain them and take care of them and all this shit, are now exactly equal to the goat humper fuckers that you've been fighting in Afghanistan because they have the same basic sort of values. In other words, much like the goat humpers, your people would rather be free of the central government and do their own fucking thing. Mind blown. Also, that's got to suck, huh? Well, I mean, you know, I'm saying maybe don't be a pirate that enforces these people's dictums on various places. You know, or the better option is, well, now that they want to use you all at home like a Praetorian fucking guard, you know, the special guard that they're going to need $434 billion a year to maintain. That's the number I recall from a special appropriations bill I was perusing the genesis of. It's not an actual going thing yet, but that's the kick-around number, as I recall, yeah. Usually, if you take that and times it by about 20% either way, you're going to get the real number in the end, okay? It's just my experience. It's not a guaranteed thing. It could be 5 times that. Could never come into life. A lot of these things abort between the concept room, the House, and the Senate, and reality of law. A lot of these abominations come into life without actual law. They're sort of undead creations that are born from the bowels of death down in the alphabet soup, you know. Is that enough truth for you? Or do you need more? Right. So, you know, as you can see, I'd rather be up in Jotunheim throwing around pillows with little kids and, you know, listening to tunes and playing music and, well, you maybe already know the rest. Let's just say polar bear man like polar bear woman. Does this make sense to you? Yes, it should. Yeah, anyone who can't grasp this is either cuckoo, insane, or, you know. On the other hand, the trick is to hold out here long enough so that, well, I do live in a lot better environment. It's if let me put it this way. The peninsula I live on in western Washington, right? When it was inhabited by about 12 to 14,000 people, it was fucking paradise. It was like the Shire, but better, you know. You understand? Yeah. That's not a joke. Almost no crime, basically no theft. What there was a few, clans of people that everyone just sort of, they stayed over there, and then when they fucked with your shit, you broke them up. I mean by that, took a board and hit them in the fucking head or the chest or the knee, broke them up. Yeah. What? This was once normal, my son. It just was. But otherwise, though, it was pretty quiet. I mean, regardless to, my own particular life was a bit of a fucking tumble. But for the average person, as I look back on it, it surely was much nicer than it was now. Much nicer, Even with the shittiness that I had going on, if I could have it, I would go back to that too. Well, because everyone else would be a lot better off than my own personal well-being or not is an irrelevancy. It's rather selfish, But nevertheless, I still can see that, there was, again, in every possible way, their money was worth more. They had better savings. They had better equity in their homes. They had more property. They had more overall tools, capital, skills, social bonds. The amount of their family sort of safety net and web interconnectivity was more. The community interconnectivity was more. And you see, it isn't just my little area that was like this. There were huge sections of the United States that were rural and semi-rural, even some of the more less diverse urban areas that were like, small mining towns and such as this, where the workforce was fairly stable in places like, say, Michigan, Wisconsin, Appalachia. There was almost no crime amongst these people. What it was the nature of your standard Germanic people doing little gambling games and whatever, and everyone knows, don't play cards unless you can pay the fee. Everyone knows this. It's no one forces anyone to gamble and such. We're not Arabs. Anyhow, point being, I guess there is no real point. The point is, I guess, if I'm going to start right off is, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do this in several sections. So we'll save the missile reading, because, right, I hate to preempt God. But we can always use this one. Under the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that has the key of David, he that openeth, and no man shutteth, and no man openeth. I know thy works, behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Behold, I will not make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews, and which are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Have you ever encountered any of these synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie? Have you ever encountered any of those anywhere? A lot of those are amongst these chicken hawk pussy motherfuckers I was just talking about, who are backwards fucking cunnies, huh? Anyhow, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come fast, know that fast which has come, that no man take thy crown. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God. And I will write upon him my new name. Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. Oh, Ephesus, Philadelphia, and these other cities that are generally mentioned in here, they were settlements in Greek Asia Minor. That's why it says the churches of Asia in there. It doesn't mean Asiatic Asia. No. It means the Greek coast of Asia Minor, my son. Paul was educated in the Hellenistic tradition, So, like it is, you may or may not, the idea that he was some like hard and fast Pharisaical Jew that, rejected the world, and then that just never happened. You understand? He was probably one of the, there was a dissenter class amongst the Pharisees, and I can't remember the exact name. Sorry, it slips. There's so many of these especially with the Yids, they always have a certain faction, 5-10% of them, who fucking, and when I say hate the others, it's, I've been to prison with such. And I was housed with one of the ones that, I mean, when I say hated the other ones, look, these neo-Nazis online got nothing on this cat. Every morning he would wake up, and I mean every morning, and be right on that fucking window, watching the other chicken twirler Yids do their antics, right? And some of the shit that he would come up with would just be utterly fucking crazy. I mean, like, oh, they think they're going to find a nickel, Just utter contempt and hatred in a way that's utterly inconceivable to me, but there it is, And it seems to be genetic. It's one of a couple of types, like phenotypes, They're almost always from the Poland bunch, and I don't know why. I don't get it. I don't fucking know, but I know a weakness and a lever and a fucking advantage when I see it among an enemy, and I use them. You understand? And that's it. See how easy that is? I just think of Paul as one of them, for those of you who play the leads, and you think, fuck off. The Jew on a stick, people. And the last person who had that to say wanted to put their face beat against a concrete bed until their fucking skull was cracked. They never did quite see right out of that eye. It fucked them up good. I was once a much bigger man. Picture me at about 220 with almost no body fat and not happy. And have the hold of you in a tight area, my son. Maul you like a fucking bear. Okay? So, yeah, Daddy doesn't have any reason to be pleasant if he doesn't want to be. What are you here for? Why am I here, you ask? I'm here to spend time. I don't know, it helps me unwind, kind of like, takes the edge off the world. Gives me the ability to be an arrogant prick, which I excel at. And you're here for a lot of reasons. Most of you are here because you're looking for something. You think I may have a bit of it for you. Perhaps it depends exactly what you are looking for. You ever seen the whole seek and you'll find thing? It's amazing, but if you convince yourself that there's gold everywhere, you'll see it everywhere. Not that it's always there, but you will see it. Can you actually bring it into reality? That's the actual test of these things, right? It's true, isn't it? Right. And think whatever you like, but if you accept the basic gospel narrative of, Paul went to these churches and wrote gospels and then was executed and so forth and martyred for the faith, those few epistles that he wrote, right, changed more than anything. And if you're going to tell me again that if you read them that they're not, there's some points where you can say, he had all the love for the Jews. Really? Because the only Jews that he seems to have any acceptance for are the ones that would accept basically the Hellenic world of the sort of Greek, Latin Christendom, early Christian tradition, which, this is just how it is. I know there's this notion that somehow the Christians were these ignorant, fucking, vile people who lived in the dregs of society and ate sewage and so forth. This isn't reality. Now, politically, their leaders survived by being underground, literally, and hiding out in the large slave camps and the mountain fastnesses of the empire and the deserts. True, yes. But the religion itself, Caligula's wife was a Christian. Every one of the empresses, from up to a certain point, were. Long before it was the official religion, my son. Do you even know any of this? It's amazing how stupid some people are. You see, these people like Paul, who could read and write 3 or 4 different languages, let's just say they were captured by the Romans. And their city was sieged, and they had to pay a tax and tribute of, say, 500 slaves, right? Do you reckon the Romans put them in a fucking mine? Or do you reckon they went to places like the proconsul's palace and did translational work and whatever it was else they were good at? Yeah, right. Because there's one thing the Romans weren't. It was stupid and sloppy with manpower this way. I give them that. And I don't much fancy the Roman Empire after a certain point. The freeholder empire of the East, I can hang with that model, but the slave-based plantations in the West I've just never been a fan of such models. They always collapse. Reason? Oh, simple. I'll tell you. This is the whole secret of the collapse of the empire. You don't need any other mystery than this. large groups of slaves, let's just say 80-90% of any given population area, and we'll make the population areas about the size of a small French district today. Okay? Being slaves and the rest being free means that the rest are basically jailers. Okay, and overseers. You understand? No. If any enemy shows up, like a wandering horde of Franks, let's just say, for instance, this is a coincidence. Let's just say there's a big band of Germanics and they show up and they say, yo, slave people. Now, there are two basic options that these people can go with. They can say, we won't kill you, right? Or we'll take you into the tribe on some kind of terms. Would you go with that if you were a slave? Oh, there's Polar Woman.